Good evening, everybody. Please be seated. Welcome to the meeting of full council this evening. I am the Mayor of Rugby, Councillor Simon Ward, and will be chairing the meeting. This meeting is being web streamed to the public through the council's YouTube channel. During the meeting, councillors, if you wish to speak, please use the push to talk button on the microphone in front of you. I would like to welcome members of the public in the gallery this evening to observe the meeting. I would, however, ask that you do not attempt to participate in the proceedings of the meeting and just allow councillors to discuss. Before we begin the formal agenda, I will ask the Acting Chief Executive to provide details of the evacuation procedure for those present.
Good evening, Mr Mayor. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. There is no fire alarm scheduled in the building this evening. If the fire alarm does sound, then please make your way out of the building, down the main staircase, out of the main doors of the Town Hall, and congregate at the entrance to Caldecott Park. An officer of the council will give further instructions on when it's safe to return to the building.
Thank you. So, item number 1, are there any apologies, Acting Chief Executive?
Mr Mayor, we have apologies from Councillors Garcia, Slinger and Trimble.
Thank you. On to item 2, to approve the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 26th of February 2025. I move that the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of council held on the 26th of February be approved and adopted. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr Mayor.
Okay, all those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. Okay, item number 3, declarations of interest. Can I remind members that when they declare interest, they must also declare the general nature of that interest? Are there any declarations under non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Councillors' Code of Conduct for Councillors? Councillor Brown.
Yes, on item 7A, I'm a county councillor.
Okay. Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 7A as a county councillor, but also item 3 on the homelessness strategy, as I'll be discussing the Health Watch, and I'm a director of Health Watch Warwickshire.
Councillor Gillius, yeah.
As a parish councillor, Mr Mayor, and ward councillor for the Revel and Binley Woods. Thank you.
Councillor Simpson-Vince.
For 7A, Warwickshire County Councillor.
Councillor Willis.
Thank you. As per Tony Gillias, Chair of Woolston Parish Council.
Just looking, any more? Councillor Timms.
Item 7A as a Warwickshire County Councillor, and I'm also a Revel and Binley Woods Rugby Brough Council.
And Councillor Dale Keeling. Councillor Maudis.
Item 6 as an employee of Dunchurch Parish Council.
Just looking around the room, have we got anybody else? Anybody we've missed? No? Okay, I think that's all covered. So, the next one is pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for Councillors. No? Okay, notice under Section 106, Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. No? Okay, on to item 4, so my mayoral announcements. So firstly, I was delighted to honour our local Olympians, Lauren Henry, MBE, and Kimberly Woods, with the accolade of Freedom of the Borough at a reception that we held at the Ben Hall recently. Fellow local Olympian Chelsea Giles will be receiving the honour later in the year due to her busy schedule. The Freedom of the Borough is one of the most significant honours, civic honours, that the council can confer upon an individual or organisation. It is more than a title, it is a symbol of our borough's admiration and respect. Lauren, Kimberly and Chelsea have made us proud, not just through their victories, but through their perseverance and the values they embody. They have not only competed at the highest level of sport, but have carried the hopes, dreams and spirit of our borough onto the world stage. training with relentless dedication, making sacrifices, and pushing beyond limits to achieve excellence. They have also inspired future generations, showing young athletes that with determination, anything is possible. It was great to see local athlete Josh Folds from Rugby and Northampton Athletics Club qualifying for the recent European Indoor Athletics Championships in Holland, representing Team GB. Josh from Rugby competed in the 4x400 metre mixed relay and the 4x400 metre men's relay. This was his first time competing at this level after years of dedication to the sport, and he amazingly came home with a bronze medal from the mixed relay and finished fourth in the men's relay. An incredible achievement. Now, I first met Josh several months ago, and he was telling me all about his busy schedule and how he self-funds his competing. If he isn't training or competing, then he's busy working in the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Centre as a swimming coach. An inspirational athlete who I'm looking forward to welcoming into the parlour soon to hear more about his journey so far and his future aspirations. Okay. Now, I recently was invited to Raw Cheer and Dance at Harris School on a couple of separate evenings to meet some of their teams and to see how they train and the routines they work on. You might have seen a photo of some of the young athletes lifting me up and showing their incredible strength. Now, Raw Cheer will be taking 2 teams, ages ranging from 7 to 19, to the USA to compete internationally for the first time in the Easter holidays. Both teams were invited to compete at these prestigious events after earning the highest marks in their competitions last year. Raw will be the first cheerleading team from rugby to compete internationally and is excited to represent our town in the USA. The athletes have been working hard in training to perfect their routines, which involve flipping upside down, throwing people in the air, jumping and dancing to fast-paced music. Now, I will add, I'm glad they didn't do that to myself when they lifted me up, but yeah. They will be scored on their routine difficulty, technique, synchronisation, creativity and showmanship. As a club, they are so proud that they have been selected to compete and have supported their athletes every step of the way, from choreography with routines being fully choreographed by head coach Ellen Burns, to financial support with over £10,000 in fundraising raised to help cover the trip costs. Alongside this, they offer mental and emotional support and a safe space for their athletes to call home. They can't wait for them to experience their first international competition and make memories for life while representing our town in the sport of cheerleading. I wish them every success in the competition and look forward to hearing all about it afterwards. Okay, now on to item number 5, questions pursuant to Standing Order 10. Are there any questions, Acting Chief Executive?
Mr Mayor, there are no questions.
On to item 6A, to receive the report of Cabinet dated the 4th of March 2025. In submitting the report of Cabinet, if members wish to raise questions or comment, will they please indicate they wish to do so when I call the item. Councillor Robinson, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled Local Plan Preferred Option Consultation?
I so move.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second the motion and reserve my right to speak. Thanks.
Councillor Robinson, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, everybody that's made the effort to come out this evening in the gallery and anyone who may be watching online. This is my 2nd year as a councillor, so I have sort of sat where you are, not literally, but sat in front of my telly and in front of the paper and in front of Facebook and got animated by local and national politics. And a couple of years ago, I decided to do something about that. So I hope, I believe in political activism, and I hope that your engagement here tonight will encourage you to continue to be engaged in this process. I think it's important. So thank you. I also hope you'll stay for the whole agenda, because we have got some really good items coming up as well on housing allocations, on homelessness, and some notices of motion as well, that I hope you'll stay around for. It's to me, though, to introduce this first substantive item. And this item is a request for Council to launch a consultation on preferred options for development. In this introduction, I will cover what the preferred option stage is, how we got here, and why it is important to proceed. The first question then is, what are preferred options? What does that mean? Does this language mean literally that this is the list of my preferred personal choices for development, or those of Councillor Marin as the leader of the council, or indeed the Planning Services Working Group that has been engaged in this process with representatives from all around the chamber? The short answer to that is no. The term preferred options is set out in legal processes and legislation for plan making. It's not a term of our choosing to describe this process. So we have to follow that. We have to follow that legal process, and that applies to all parties, all councils, all officers. Now, in the work that we have done, I believe there are some genuine preferred options in that plan, such as 2 new country parks, safeguarding for Brandon Stadium, net zero homes, and more that we will come to. And then when it comes to having to choose which rural areas the council will allocate for development, this is where the term preferred options becomes something of a misnomer. It would be better to title that the least worst options. Okay? So that's the question that we have to answer. Which of the available site options are the preferred options, and which are the least worst options, both for nature and for residents, and how can we mitigate any harm? So this is the current stage of the local plan creation that we're at. It's about determining that list of sites, and this administration, is choosing to do that through a consultative process. So the second set of questions then for me that flows from that simple those statements of fact is, why are we choosing between green spaces? Why does the green belt even feature in the list of potential sites? Why are there not more town centre and brownfield sites? So the site options are not determined by the council. They are driven by developers who put forward sites through an earlier phase that was called the call for sites. This phase was instructed by the Conservative administration from October 2023 to February 2024. At the time, the Labour opposition asked them to pause and engage in a more strategic approach to development before going out to the market to let the market decide. The Labour opposition warned that issuing the call for sites before working to identify brownfield and town centre sites for viable development would open up the Greenbelt to more development. The Conservative administration refuted these concerns and chose to press on, giving the power to developers and putting the council on the back foot. The result is precisely as we predicted. There are not enough sites in the list of options to avoid building in the Greenbelt. The only other option, if we took all those Greenbelt villages out, would be to bring a new development in Rainsbrook Valley at Lodge Farm of thousands of homes. That would be a significant blot on the landscape of a treasured part of the borough and would send more traffic up the already congested crossroads at Dunchurch. The Lodge Farm site was the solution that Conservatives pushed forward in the last local plan, though, and the planning inspector put an end to that. It is one of the site options put forward by developers this time, although not a preferred option, for a raft of sensible reasons. So, I've covered what it is, how we got here, and why it looks the way it looks. The third logical question for me, putting myself in your shoes, is, well, can we pause this now? If this is not, if we've not got any really good choices, can we not pause this? Why do we have to do a plan at all? Can we just say no? Can we simply say no to any sites for housing, employment, and gypsy travellers? Is that even viable? Well, I'm sorry, no, it's not. It is an option, but it would have the polar opposite effect to the one which you would intend. Instead of protecting Rugby Borough, it would open it up to development that our planning team has relatively little control over. Without a local plan and without a 5-year housing supply, the presumption in favour of sustainable development means that all the sites that you've seen in that call for sites are potentially in scope. So to avoid this situation, the council has to show leadership and deliver a local plan that follows the appropriate regulated processes and is approved by the planning inspector. The final local plan must apply transparent, well-considered principles. It must draw on evidence and take account of consultation. What it must not be is politicised. So these are the reasons why we must proceed with consultation. In doing so, we must try to make the best of this local plan for our current and future residents. So in summary, how do I see it? I see the preferred options consultation as a genuine opportunity to gather further evidence so we can refine the list of sites to optimise them. I believe the sites will change once we have more evidence. If we change sites without the appropriate evidence base, there is a risk the inspector will not approve the plan. We must go through the due process. All the councillors of all parties share responsibility for ensuring that we have that viable plan that protects Rugby Borough from uncontrolled development and delivers maximum possible benefit. I ask tonight that the councillors take this process seriously and cease misleading the public. This is too important a process for that. I'm not holding my breath though. Based on the misleading propaganda of the last few weeks, I anticipate we are about to witness a series of pleas from the Conservative councillors to now shut the stable door after the horse has bolted. But let's be clear though, it was they who opened the door in the first place. What you'll hear from this side of the chamber is how we're working to make the best of this, which includes gathering more evidence through consultation with the public and stakeholders.
So, sorry, Councillor Robinson, just at that point, I think we need to move on because we're...
Okay. Can I finish this sentence?
Go on, finish that sentence, yeah.
So, where was I? So we need to consult with our stakeholders. We're being transparent, accountable and responsible. And I will leave it to my colleagues to pick up the other points. But thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you again for coming.
Okay, I call on any speakers who would like to speak first. Councillor Picker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the principal reason for my objection at this stage is the way in which we're going about this. There has not been any serious engagement to enable members to make an informed decision this evening. We're moving to a consultation on preferred options, yet the alternative sites haven't been shared, nor has the underlying evidence base, nor has the methodology behind it been properly explained to members of Planning Services Working Party. No, it hasn't. I had to request, Councillor Moran, a meeting with officers after that.
A point of order, please. A point of order, please. That statement is categorically incorrect. The evidence, the methodology and the strategy was discussed at length.
No,
and the officers are there and it's minuted. That is not correct.
I had to request a meeting with officers afterwards to understand the methodology behind the proposals. And I want to be particularly clear, I don't blame officers for this, because there's a fundamental principle I hold to. Officers advise, members make the decisions. But tonight you're asking us to make a decision sight unseen. Okay? The briefing on the full details of the local plan is to be held after this vote. That is absurd. That is absolutely absurd. And the administration seems to believe that members scrutinising and engaging with the preferred options stage ahead of it going to full consultation is politicising the approach. I call it doing the job we're sent here by the public to do. Of course, it is probably quite a bit easier to argue that when 70% of the sites are represented by the opposition. I would say that that alone is enough to vote against this tonight. But it actually gets worse. You spoke about how we began the process, absolutely correctly. We are required to undertake reviews of the local plan, At the time, and I believe it was the 29th of November, the now leader of the council argued that it was a waste of time, a waste of money, and, quote, many councils function very happily with plans that are years, sometimes decades out of date. Yet we've just heard the opposite from the portfolio holder. Now, as fun as it might be to relitigate all those arguments, when I moved it in 2022, as Councillor Robinson said, I spoke about delivering houses in the town centre as part of a regeneration strategy. I spoke about the need to bring forward the best practice on environmental grounds and incorporate sustainability into our new builds. And I spoke about the need to bring it forward alongside an economic strategy, deliver smaller units and diversify our local economy. Now, I am pleased that some of those have survived the change in administration. I'm pleased to see that we are continuing with an economic strategy, and I am pleased with some of the stuff regarding sustainability. That's the right approach to take. Shame about small modular reactors, though there are some positive noises from the central government on that front. However, as we moved through that process, there were one or two changes, as the Labour group is quite happy to remind us. Specifically, there's now a Labour administration here and a Labour administration in Westminster. And one of the consequences of that is we've gone from having a local evidence base informed by the headner that this or the previous administration commissioned to having targets imposed by Westminster with absolutely no say. And by the way, if you go to the gov.uk website on the new standard method, under the previous standard method, it was 525 residential units a year. Now it is 618. It's a 20% increase with absolutely no room for manoeuvre by local authorities.
Sorry,
again,
a point of order, please.
Quoting from the
point of order.
Quoting from the previous statement.
Just allow the
point of order. That's incorrect. We have, as an authority, we have discretion, and the numbers have gone down, not up. That is a fundamental misrepresentation.
I can share the gov.uk statistics if you'd like me to. Although I am grateful for the leader of the council, because when he said the rugby has done more than its fair share for the national picture, that clearly wasn't communicated to the Prime Minister or the the Secretary of State. Perhaps he can ask Councillor Slinger MP to reiterate that. And then finally, we've got the actual sites being proposed. There is essentially nothing in the town centre. There's no plans to deliver in the most sustainable part of the borough. And even more than that, there's a piece of brownfield land 500 yards from this building, previously had social housing on it. It was demolished rightfully due to safety concerns. There are no proposals. In fact, there's a letter being circulated on social media seeming to imply that that site won't be regenerated. You could be forgiven for concluding that under the Conservatives we had regenerated social housing at Buyout Place, or as it's now known, Navigation Way, and no proposals from the new administration. Instead, we've got sites in the open countryside, in the Greenbelt, an 80% increase in the size of one rural village, and the proposed preferred sites are driving a coach and horses through established planning policy in the Rainsbrook Valley under the extant local plan and upheld at appeal and dismissed by the planning inspector. And just before anyone wants to start throwing around the accusations of NIMBY, Hillmorton, the ward I represent, took the single largest allocation of housing in my adult lifetime under the previous administration. It's a nationally recognised site of excellence, delivering houses and infrastructure at scale. That is how you do a proper, sustainable local plan. And finally, and I do mean finally, I just want to pick up on this argument that appears to have been being made, that somehow by deferring the process entirely to officers, that it's nothing to do with anyone else. I have a memory, a very distinct memory. It was in this room, a private meeting. I believe Councillor Roodhouse was there. I believe Councillor O'Rourke was there. I don't believe Councillor Moran was there at the time. And there were businesses who were rightly concerned about the progress of town centre regeneration under the previous administration. And despite the fact that...
Sorry, Councillor Picker, I'm just going to have to stop you there. Okay.
And despite the fact that some of it was operational decisions, what I said at the time was I was the portfolio holder. I am responsible for these issues, and ultimately the buck stopped with me. The administration has chosen to bring forward the consultation in this way and accept the advice of officers but not to take any responsibility for that. You're voting for it, you're supporting it, it is your plan. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mowdis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to express my deep concerns about the proposed large-scale housing allocations in our rural areas. The preferred options document sets out a clear settlement hierarchy, a strategy designed to direct development to locations best equipped to support it. It rightly recognises Rugby Town as the primary focus for housing growth, while rural settlements should see only appropriate small-scale development. Yet what is being proposed is a fundamental contradiction of that principle. Large-scale development in villages such as Wolvie means the destruction of agricultural land, the loss of green open spaces, and a rise in car dependency. That is not sustainable development. It is the very opposite. Let me be clear, this is not about opposing development. Growth is necessary and we must plan for the future. But allocating 710 houses to Wolvie is not dispersal, it's over-concentration. Wolvie School's reception in Key Stage 1 is at capacity with a waiting list of 12 for next year's reception intake. It simply is not equipped to handle a surge in pupils from large-scale development. Previous allocations have not been built out yet, meaning that the full impact on local infrastructure and services has yet to be realised. Furthermore, Wolvie's road network is not designed to accommodate a major increase in traffic. There are accessibility and highway safety risks on Bulkington Road and Coventry Road due to existing 50-mile-an-hour speed limits and a lack of footpaths. These roads are already hazardous for pedestrians and cyclists and would only become more dangerous. The evidence against large-scale development in Wolvie has been well documented. In 2016, the Wolvie Site Allocations Development Pack was produced to guide discussions between the Development Strategy Team at RBC and Wolvie Parish Council. This included the Greenbelt Review and Landscape Character Assessment, which found that land around Wolvie has a strong rural character and a locally prominent skyline, making it inappropriate for large-scale development. The Environment Agency also identified flood risks around the River Anchor and Makins Fishery, raising concerns about the viability of development in these areas. There will also be a huge increase in impermeable surface area, which can only be discharged to a designated flood zone, which includes a main river. The 2016 site assessment also highlighted that Wolvie surgery was near capacity. A much larger development would require substantial expansion of medical facilities, which is not physically possible at the current site. Wolvie sewage is served by a single pump station, which will not have the capacity for large-scale development. There is no funding for improvements, as detailed in the AMP8 published in December 2024. Additionally, the proposed allocations on both sides of the B4065 are at a lower elevation than the existing sewage system, necessitating pumping, which will lead to increased carbon emissions from both construction and ongoing operation. And let's talk about the environmental cost. Our countryside is a precious resource. It is not an inconvenience to be built over. It is the very thing that makes our villages what they are. Once it's lost forever. Large-scale housing in rural areas will mean increased traffic, loss of agricultural land and disruption to our landscapes and biodiversity. A prime example being the Wolvie Rush Pastures local wildlife site, which sits close to one of the proposed developments, potentially leading to biodiversity loss, or the agricultural land that is Grade 2, meaning that the plan would permanently destroy high-quality farmland. Not only does this proposal threaten our environment and infrastructure, but the evidence and methodology used to justify it has not been shared with us. I was part of the Planning Services Working Party, and I've not been privy to the methodology used for selecting sites for recommendation. We're being asked to make a major decision without being given all the facts. That's simply not acceptable. How can we, in good conscience, vote for something...
Another point of order. That's simply not true. The members of the Planning Services Working Group have had all of the facts, the methodology. This is a lie.
Sorry, I've had an email from officers to reinforce that. How can we, in good conscience, vote for something when we do not have the full evidence and justification before us? The NPPF states that greenbelt development should only happen in exceptional circumstances. I've not seen any evidence to demonstrate that. Have we exhausted brownfield and infill options first? We don't know, because we haven't seen the evidence. Will this development genuinely provide affordable housing for local people, or will it simply benefit developers and external buyers? Again, we don't know, because the evidence hasn't been shared. For this reason alone, I urge my fellow councillors to reject this recommendation. We must demand full transparency and proper evidence before we can even consider such a drastic and damaging proposal. Anything less would be a failure of our duty to the public we serve. But this is not the only imbalance we must address. In addition to the excessive housing allocations, rural areas, particularly in the north parts of the borough, are once again being asked to accommodate the majority of gypsy and traveller pitches. To be clear, this is not a matter of opposing provision, but rather ensuring that the distribution of sites across the borough is fair and equitable. Time and again, we find that the same rural location is selected for additional traveller sites, despite already housing the majority of the borough's pitches. The approach is neither fair nor sustainable. Just as it would be unacceptable to concentrate all new housing in a single area, it is equally unjust to place the burden of provision disproportionately on one part of our rural community. Furthermore, with the proposed addition of only 8 pitches and authorising existing temporary sites, this recommendation still fails to meet the actual need. As a result, our rural areas will continue to be vulnerable to unauthorised developments, which we must strive to prevent. A local plan should deliver balance, not reinforce an unequal burden on certain areas. And above all, it must be transparent in its decision-making. We must ensure that the future growth is guided by fairness, sustainability, and the interests of all residents. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Simpson-Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This actually started back in 21 when Coventry's housing numbers were up for debate. And I remember Councillor O'Rourke and at the time Councillor Brader giving me quite a hard time about the Coventry numbers. And if we had all the Coventry numbers redone, we wouldn't need to build any more houses in Rugby. So how come?
Point of order. I think what was said at the time, the ONS data that was used was not right. It wasn't correct. So, you know, it's not quite as you're describing. The ONS data was faulty.
But they didn't know that at the time and they then started the investigation. But we couldn't do anything until we had all the numbers from Coventry. And they then waited on census data. Obviously, the census was in 2021, so they had to wait on the census data. I don't know what the numbers were after that because I wasn't here. But that's what started this whole process, the looking at Coventry's numbers, of the inaccuracy of Coventry's numbers and the overspill that comes over to us. Anyway, we're here today. Now, I've not seen any evidence for this. The first I knew about this was when it turned up in the Cabinet paper with all of the sites. And at first glance, it seems a bit of a scattergun approach, a sort of a big map of Rugby Borough and just where should we put the tokens to find the sites. There doesn't seem to be a logic behind it. Also, with the officers, they will be putting suggestions forward for the sites that come in. However, we are a member-led council. Our job is to talk to the officers, give a steer, even if it's not the final response of sites that we want to use, but you kind of steer the officers. You can't just leave them to just sit there and think, well, I don't know where you want all these housing sites to be. I don't know where you want these commercial development sites to be, or how many houses you want on this site, or how much development land, commercial development space you want on this particular piece of land. We should be inputting into that process. And again, in terms of evidence and knowing about this, our briefing on all of this is next week. So we're having to vote on something today that we don't have the information for, and we're going to find out about it next week. Okay. We spoke at the meeting in February, and Councillor Willis was very eloquent about talking about flood prevention and flooding schemes in the villages. I mentioned Stretton-on-Dunsmore. You were talking about Woolston. We had other villages being mentioned. And yet, in this plan, villages that we know flood have been put forward to take more housing. And villages in the Greenbelt are being put forward to take more housing. So on one hand, we all agree that this is a bad thing, and then it turns up in this paper. Okay. Some sites previously earmarked for residential are now commercial. And some that are commercial have now become residential. Again, we don't know why. We've not been given any reasons for that. So again, it's hard to make a decision on, okay, I understand the logic of that, but we don't know why that's happened. And just looking at sites like Hillmorton, the Rainsbrook Valley, I was on the planning committee when that application for Barbie Lane came through. Must have been 2018, 19, it was a while ago. As a planning committee, and several members in this room were on that committee at the time, we voted it down. We said no. And the planning inspector agreed with us. And yet, it's in here. It just seems crazy that we're voting on something that we haven't had a chance to properly have an evidence base for, have an explanation for. Just send us a document and say, you want to vote on a consultation. I just think it seems a bit unreasonable.
Councillor Harrington.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think we'll have some positives about this local plan consultation. Want to clarify in Mr Picker, or Councillor Picker, Rounds Gardens, there's a letter went out to the residents. It's council-owned property. We've given them the choice. So what you said wasn't correct. So I'm going to make you stand corrected there. Thank you ever so much. And that's not the first time tonight. What I'm going to say for this local consultation plan is rules, regulations about HMOs. It's amazing news for Ben, for New Bilton and rest of Rugby. Currently, 60% of all 6-bedroom HMOs are in Ben. I want to thank the residents of Ben, New Bilton, councillors from both wards with their 2 petitions to get this on the agenda to have a good local plan for it.
Point of clarification, I said that Rounds Gardens wasn't in the list of sites,
yes,
which is a statement of fact.
But with clarification though, we're actually speaking to the residents what's going on and what would they prefer to have as it's council-owned property. So yes, thank you. Currently, currently, I just say like, no, let's get facts in here. Come on. Now, currently, we have 6-bedroom planning need planning permission, and now we're going to get planning permission on 4. The rules of this is going to help out with the concentration HMOs and also sandwiching. So currently, at the moment, in Grosvenor Road, there's 4 HMOs in a row. So for me personally, this is going to help the inner city wards to give them what they deserve. Thank you.
Councillor O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to sort of follow up on that in terms of the HMOs, I mean, you're really lucky that we've put it in, not just for the over-concentration in Ben Ward, but it will protect some of the other sites as well around the town, because I'm sure everybody won't want over-concentrations of HMOs in their wards either. And I find it, I mean, I wasn't particularly going to talk about this tonight, but it is an area that I'm very passionate about. We were asking in opposition for years for the Tory administration to deal with this. It's caused real hardship to lots of people around the town centre, not being able to park, fly tipping, all sorts of issues. And you just didn't listen. We asked and asked and asked. You made all sorts of promises, but it never materialised. So now, for the first time ever, we're acting on behalf of lots of people in the town and been completely overlooked. Sorry, I'm not...
Point of order. The article of order action was moved by me whilst I was the portfolio holder.
I'm sorry, you've not been here that long. We've been asking for years and years and years. You did, but I'm saying to you, for about 10 years we were asking for this, and it fell completely on deaf ears. Nobody took it up, nobody listened, just weren't interested. And can I say, also, this is a consultation. It's, you know, we're not at the end of it yet. And it is really awful that it's been made so political. So I'm going to hit back. You've made it political. I'll make it political now. Right. So I've noticed, ladies and gentlemen, that many of the comments on social media are in relation to the draft local plan, the listening exercise, are about the lack of infrastructure, not enough schools, not enough GPs, not enough pharmacies or dentists, limited bus services. And guess what? I agree with many of those comments. It's true that many of our GP practices in the borough of Rugby are 30% oversubscribed. It's true that several local pharmacies have closed down. It's true that it's hard to register at an NHS dentist. It's true that we need more schools. These infrastructure challenges are everywhere, not just in Rugby. It's strange how things have evolved over the years. I can remember when in discussion about the first local plan many years ago with the then portfolio holder, Councillor Heather-Timms, about raising my concerns about the infrastructure. And she assured me that everything was in hand. Well, guess what? Not everything is in hand, is it at all? Because we are actually reaping the benefit of the fact that neither this council, Warwickshire County Council, or the national government have dealt with some of these issues. Some of the bigger issues, like the NHS, are being picked up now by this government at national level, and they're acting on it. And just to highlight a couple of these initiatives, the NHS waiting times are now being reduced as 40,000 more appointments have been made available every single week. The number of cancer scanners available for diagnosis has doubled in the last 5 months. There is a new dentistry rescue plan and pharmacy contracts are currently being discussed. More GPs. What do you mean?
Point of order, we're off subject.
Sorry? It's not important that we have doctors and nurses and pharmacies and dentists to meet all the growing needs.
Just on that point, it is related to the subject. So, yeah, we'll just stick to the point. But yeah,
I'm sorry if you don't like the messages, but you and your government are responsible for a lot of the issues we're having to pick up now. More GPs are now being trained. However, and we actually, for the first time ever, have a workforce plan for the NHS. And guess what? We gave our doctors and nurses a pay rise, one that they actually really deserved, that your government wouldn't give. However, as local leaders, we must lead from the front and continuing to work towards ensuring that we have more NHS services delivered locally, enough school places and improved bus services, particularly to our rural areas. Getting a doctor-led service at the urgent care unit reinstated at St Cross is a priority for us, and reviewing out of our GP service is also a priority. I'm pleased to say that we are now progressing this very quickly and changes are already being implemented. Locally, the good news is that our administration, supported by the Lib Dems, has now introduced a community infrastructure levy. In opposition, we asked for this many times, didn't we, Councillor Roodhouse? I can't remember how many times we asked for it. And guess what? There was no appetite from the other side to actually introduce it. Now, because of those failings, we have lost out on £20 million that could have been invested in local services, in our local infrastructure. Anyway, the good news is we have got it now, we've introduced it, and it's happening. It was
sorry, Councillor Rourke, can I just ask you to finalise just on, because we're keeping the times equal for everybody. Yeah, it flies by.
I was just getting warmed up. Anyway, look, just to say, as a closing remark, actually, I just want to say we are working closely with other partners and we are very concerned about all of our residents, not just the ones in our backyard. We really do care about everybody. We are undertaking a strategic transport assessment to determine the transport infrastructure. We're looking at preferred option documents to deliver green infrastructure, and we're proposing new local shops in Long Lawford, Wolvie and Brinklow, and in Wolvie a new preschool and smaller retail community units. We will do the best we can for everybody because we care. Thank you.
Councillor Livesey first.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor O'Rourke, can you just turn your mic off, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I want to talk about something that is of particular interest to the residents in my ward, but there are, I think, some big misunderstandings about the situation, and that is about what has happened to the secondary school site that was proposed for Coton Park. So I think in matters such as planning, it's really important to deal with the facts, and I've done a lot of digging around to actually find out what the facts are. But first of all, I want to say that all councillors in this chamber tonight believe there should be a new secondary school in the north of the borough. However, for years, the Conservative-controlled County Council, which is responsible for education, argued that there was no requirement for such a school. This council, at the time, was controlled by the Conservatives, and the County Council, also in Conservative control, were at loggerheads, and this was documented in the local press. So the previous local plan did have a site allocated, But this was reserved for only 2 years as it was allocated as a contingency by the planning inspector. At the time, Warwickshire County Council were adamant that no secondary school was necessary in the north of Rugby, and they didn't buy the site. They believed the lack of places could be solved by expanding other schools in the town. Some residents who've written to me have referred to a planning application R20-4787, which they say indicated another site for a school, but this was not the secondary school site. It was a smaller area of land that could be used for school purposes, for example, a playing field. And that land was only reserved until June 2022, and again, the County Council didn't buy it. There's currently no school site available to us, because at present we have no policy basis for insisting the Coton Park East landowners provide their land to us for this purpose. We can't even compulsorily purchase their land, because to do so we would need a supporting policy framework, and we don't have that under the current local plan, which was designed by the Conservatives. So both these sites reverted back to the landowner because the County Council didn't buy them and the relevant purchase windows had elapsed. This is also covered by the local press. The landowner has subsequently requested that the sites be allocated as employment land, which would mean that a school cannot be built there. It's possible that the council could retain the residential designation, though the landowner has been unable to find a developer to take it on. This would be against the landowner's wishes, and the council would face questions about whether the residential scheme and school site was deliverable. It has not been deliverable to date. If a school site were to be reserved at Coton Park, it could only be built after the residential land had been developed, because the proposed school site was in the northeast of the site between Newton Lane and the M6. Even if the residential land came forward, this would delay a school being built. So what we're having in front of us today is the second step in a 5-step process to agree the local plan. Everything in this preferred options paper is up for comment and consultation. Some people have been led to believe that the opportunity to comment is limited, and if the preferred options paper goes out for consultation, this will somehow fossilise the proposals and we'll be stuck with them. This isn't the case. This is a genuine consultation, and not everything in this document will survive contact with reality. It's going to be at least 18 months and probably 2 years before we have a final approved plan. So to be clear, we all want to see a school in the north of the borough, but Rugby Borough Council neither owns the land in question, nor does Warwickshire County Council. All this council can do is identify potential sites. The County Council will be a consultee on the preferred options document, and it may have a view on whether the proposed site is viable. A site at Newton is proposed, and there may be good arguments for a school to be built there, or for a school not to be built there. That is the purpose of the consultation. If the site at Newton is unsuitable, we will have to find a new one. Whichever site gets adopted, site-specific issues such as safety, highways, drainage, etc. will come later in the process. An unsafe site will not have a school built on it. The Conservative County Council for 2 years took no action on the secondary school in the north of the borough. They did not buy the land in Coton Park when they had the opportunity to do so, and so we now have to find a new site.
Councillor Daly. Councillor Livesey, if you just want to turn your mic off as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The report we are debating tonight clearly sets out what we are being asked to vote on. The report states that in December 2022, Council agreed to proceed with a full update to the local plan between 30th of October 2023 and the 2nd of February 2024, and issues and options consultation was undertaken. It goes on to explain that that issues and options consultation did not propose specific sites, instead identifying a range of possible broad locations. It also says there was very little consensus on these, with many comments for and against locations. Tonight, we are being asked to send this administration's preferred options to public consultations. These are not rough outlines anymore. These are concrete proposals in clearly identified locations. These preferred options will see swathes of countryside in, amongst others, Longlawford, Stretton-on-Dunsmore, Brinklow, Wolvey, and of course Hillmorton, where I represent, developed with hundreds of houses for each village. Bizarrely, all of these locations appear to be slap bang in the middle of highly sensitive landscapes. That's landscapes defined as highly sensitive in a report that's still on this council's website. Additionally, we are yet to see the impact on local transport infrastructure. We are being promised more detail on the decision-making process once the consultation begins, which unfortunately suggests that tonight's proceedings will end with the administration starting that public consultation. How can we realistically be asked to vote for your preferred options when we have absolutely no idea what the alternatives were? How can we support your proposals when we have no idea?
A point of order, please. There has to be a point where we have some sort of member code of conduct. That is not true. There's a planning services working group where they've shared all the information, and if they've not disseminated it amongst their group, they don't talk to each other. That's not the fault of the administration. That information has been shared.
Mr Mayor, Councillor O'Rourke has just asked whether the officers could confirm that.
At this point, we'll bring in the Chief Officer.
At Planning Services Working Party, members were provided with discussion on the strategy, which they all were cognizant of. They were also provided with some of the sites that had come forward and some of the key options, e.g. Lodge Farm, which Councillor Robinson has referred to, and other large developments, and the methodology for why they weren't selected and why a different approach was taken.
Mr Mayor, on a point of personal explanation, as the leader of the Liberal Democrat group, from my particular position and the information as per standing orders within that, my members on that Planning Services Working Party, Councillor Isabel Mackenzie and Councillor Neil Sanderson, at our group meetings explained the position of where the local plan was and the details of that data. And I was also invited in as the group leader, as other group leaders were, for any particular briefings that we wanted at that particular time to get any more information. So I'm quite surprised that we have some really experienced councillors in this chamber tonight who actually are saying the words that they are, because that experience tells me that you can pull this information at any point, at any time that's going through that processes. And I expected my two members coming from our group to actually inform the group exactly what was going on, which is what they did. That's on the point of personal explanation.
Can I continue? Sorry, yeah. I am not a member of the Planning Services Working Party.
Sorry, Mr Mayor, to cut across that, I'm not a member of the Planning Services Working Party. The point I was making on a personal explanation was that my members from that group came to me as the group leader and actually spoke to me about it and spoke to the members of the group. That's the point I'm bringing forward.
May I ask for a point of information?
Hang on, we're just going to go to the Chief Officer for Legal and Governance.
Just through you, Mayor, in terms of just setting out the principles in terms of working parties and the responsibilities for members on those working parties, that there is that responsibility to pass further information on to the parties as a whole, because they are effectively the spokespersons for the parties on those particular working parties.
Sorry, a point of personal clarification.
Sorry, Ian, Councillor Pick, I'm so sorry. I was just checking whether I could actually ask, this is for clarification. The particular working group that we're talking about, the planning working group, the membership of that group is recorded on the web. I would think there's a way to access who was actually engaged in that process. So as a point of clarification, I'm not saying let's do it now, because that would be a complete waste of time and possibly embarrassing. But we can access to check out the veracity of what's been said. I think that would be helpful.
Okay. Councillor Picker, did you want to just...
I think there's possibly two things being conflated here. One is Planning Services Working Party, and my recollection, and recollections may vary, is that an approach was presented by the administration, not for debate. You were quite clear that there was not going to be a discussion of individual sites or the approach that was taken. Secondly, I've referred to the methodology and the evidence base. The evidence base has not yet been shared with members.
And on that point, we're going to go back to Councillor Daly to carry on what you were saying, Councillor Daly.
So, I've completely lost where I was. So I was asking how we can realistically be asked to vote for your preferred options when we have absolutely no idea what the alternatives were. And how we do not yet know the full impact that these options will have on the highway network in these villages. But where would we put houses? Unfortunately, due to the new Labour government's increased housing targets, Rugby is destined for yet more housing. In the past, we focused on major developments like Holton, which required developers to provide schools, roads, open spaces, doctors' surgeries and district centres. Tonight's proposals tack hundreds of additional houses onto the edge of picturesque villages with limited mention of additional services. In November 2022, Rugby Council also published a report which considered the number of additional homes that could be developed in Rugby's town centre, in the most sustainable location with the bus and rail network within walking distance. This report, which is referenced in the draft local plan, states that as many as 2,000 homes could be built on sites in the town centre and the surrounding area over the next 20 years. These homes would provide the bulk of Rugby's housing need until 2045 and would help to regenerate Rugby's town centre, just as other local authorities are doing across the country. Maybe there's a reason these ideas have been ruled out. I don't know, because I haven't seen why these allocations weren't preferred. I would also like to speak about Hillmorton specifically, as that is the village that I represent. The proposals for Hillmorton would see the Rainsbrook Valley desecrated. I was on planning committee when an application came forward to build 5 houses off Barbie Lane. At that meeting, a councillor argued that allowing 5 houses would gobble up Dunchurch, that this area was the buffer zone between the next villages and that we must fight to preserve this important and sensitive landscape. Well, tonight, that fight starts for Hillmorton. As a Hillmorton councillor, I will never support a local plan which builds hundreds of houses in the highly sensitive landscape of the Rainsbrook Valley. I will continue to fight these proposals to protect the buffer zones which stops Hillmorton and Paddocks gobbling up Dunchurch. For anyone watching at home who is just as appalled by all of these proposals, I implore you to respond to the Council's consultation when it opens next week. This administration wants to hear your views on these proposals, as they've explained tonight, so make sure you give them your views. Not responding to this consultation will only embolden their campaign to concrete over the countryside. These are not our preferred options, and for that reason, I will be voting against starting this public consultation.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Thank you. So moving things along slightly, I want to talk about the green agenda and the way it's represented in the document as you see it. For the first time, we're looking at the development of a greener Rugby as something that's supported by an economic strategy, and it targets very strongly greener growth. It's underpinned by policies such as the tree canopy policy, policy EN5. It proposes 2 new county parks and other sites which improve public access to green space and improve our wildlife corridors, massively important not just for wildlife, but also for our residents' mental health and the impact that improved green areas have on younger people's mental health. The activities that can happen there is considerable. Sites that have significant landscape sensitivities, already been mentioned. For example, large sites put forward in the Rainsbrook Valley will not be built on. It supports our climate change mitigation strategy and adaptation plan by introducing a leading edge policy on net zero buildings. How fantastic is that? That Rugby can be involved in something that is cutting edge. We are a town, our history is based on developments right from the jet engine through to goodness knows what, which is cutting edge, and here's a chance to continue that. This places RBC amongst the vanguard of authorities promoting such policies. That's policy CL1. It also identifies land suitable for wind turbines on the policies map and supports wind turbines of up to 40 metres on employment sites through policy C2, while giving specific support to proposals that have community involvement and benefits. Importantly, it addresses water scarcity through a new Vanguard Again policy that sets tough water use standards for non-residential development, that's CL3, to address water scarcity. It's really important that this green agenda is front and centre of the local discussion plan, and this is our chance to control development and put in the protections around the environment in Rugby that we need to adapt to climate change, tackle the biodiversity crisis and protect our water supply. So thank you for listening.
Okay, Councillor Claire Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. As you know, I returned to this council a few months ago, and it is a great privilege to be a housing portfolio holder amongst many other things that I do on this council. I want to ask you a question. Do you have a good quality, affordable home where there's no overcrowding, no insecure tenancy, and affordable bills? Too many people in this borough here and now do not have access to that. Do you know how many affordable homes we are building currently? 17%. That is criminally low, and there are hundreds of people who are not accessing proper, decent housing. And the need for that underpins everything we do as part of our corporate strategy moving forward. We have spent many hours with officers making sure that we have some good news to say on that, on allocations, on new homelessness strategy, on social funding to improve the quality of our housing. We'll get to that later in the agenda after we've had this debate. But I want us to look at what we want from this borough for all our residents, both urban and rural, if you must make a difference between the two over the next 20 years. That is what this local plan consultation is all about. It's where we want housing and where we don't want housing. It's where we want protection of the local environment and where the local environment can be tweaked a little bit. It's about where we have country parks. It's where we have new rules to make sure that HGVs don't park close to residential areas or close to schools, because that is a massive issue in my ward. My ward didn't exist 10 years ago. This plan puts in place a few more houses. Yes, I accept that, but it also puts in safeguards to those houses. It makes sure that every affordable house has a proper garden. It makes sure that they are, at least 10% are able to be made suitable for wheelchair conversion. It puts in place some real commitment to that problem of overcrowding that we have at the moment. It ensures a minimum standard on room sizes. It ensures gardens. At this moment in time, there are houses, and I won't mention names, where actually the residents can't even get out of their car on their drive because they've made them too small and you can't get access with your doors, and they hit the brick wall of next door. That's not good quality housing, and this document adds lots of detail to that to make sure that we move forward in a proper, sustainable way. It puts the environment at the heart of it, and we will protect that. But what I want to say is there's a lot in this document that I don't like. But there is 119 pages of it that is ample detail for me to make a decision as an individual on what I like and what I don't like. And I will be taking part in that consultation, as I hope everyone who's listening to this or watching this or in the audience will actually take the time to do that. because all these speeches don't mean anything. It's about putting yourself forward and writing down what you want and what you don't want, but it has to be evidence-based. Like all planning rules, we have had to go through lots of training to make sure that we do everything based on rules, and we're following the rules with this consultation. I'm very keen that I represent a ward where a huge chunk of it is actually part of Churchever Parish Council. So I don't see this debate as being rural versus urban. There are different communities, different needs, different services that need to be there, different infrastructure that needs to be there, and we all have to work together as a team to get the resources that we need and the infrastructure we need to support the existing communities and communities that will develop in the future. I want us to be a thriving community in Rugby Borough, even if through devolution we may not exist in that format. But that's what this is about, and it's about getting that best response to that. And as a councillor, I stand up for my community. Actually, I have a bigger role in my portfolio, so I stand up for all the communities. It's a lot of work, and I don't complain about that because it's a privilege of my life to do it. But I accept that there are lots of people outside this chamber who have lots of views on the world. They have the right to be consulted and engaged. I'm going through a shortened version where we make decisions here on the options and make them as short as possible because it suits us, isn't a way forward. We have to talk to people, and it's people who have the power to make their comments on what they want rugby to look like in 20 years' time. And that's why this consultation is really important, and that's why I'm voting for us to consult over the next 8 weeks. Thank you.
Councillor Roodhouse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A number of particular points tonight. And can I say, I totally agree by starting with Councillor Edwards that the consultation, it is a time to engage, fully engage, and go down. And I'd urge any resident, all residents and communities to engage with that 8 weeks, which I think is normally longer this time because of the Easter holidays allowing more time on that. Some members in this chamber have been down this road several times. I think this is probably my 3rd or 4th local plan. Looking at Councillor Gillies, Councillor Picklersdorn, Councillor Timms, and there's other members across this side who've done it as well. So we've been up and down local plan road for a number of times, which gives you a number of experiences. And as a county councillor, I did represent the area of Hill Morton, actually through the times of Halton and Urban and Civic, and all the debates, and I bear the scars of those debates going through that time. And likewise, you know, Councillor Sanderson with me has been down that particular road. Quite clearly, my starting point is national governments of all colours, all persuasions, of all talk about housing supply. Let's solve the housing crisis. Let's do this. And all you ever hear from governments of all persuasions and all colours is let's release land, let's release the planning laws, let's ease this and get building. And that's what we hear, and we've heard that day in and day out in local government. So the direction of travel from this government hasn't changed. In fact, it's probably got harder in the sense that they want growth and they want to go down there. And we have this thing which we are aware of, and those councillors that have been around the planning system are aware of the 5-year land supply and that debate that's gone on over the 5-year land supply. Rugby is now at 4.6 years, as was indicated in a planning report the other day, which went to planning committee. That means there is a presumption in favour of development at this point in time for this borough, which puts us on a risky path, because that means if you go to the planning inspectorate, the inspectorates tend to look at the presumption of favour of development, which means you have to build. No plan is perfect. I've never known a plan come forward, again, from all parties everywhere. No plan is perfect when it starts. It has to start on a journey. And this is Regulation 18, so it's actually hitting the formal journey for the first time. It will come back. It will come back. And we've got 8 weeks, and I think it'll be in 2026 by the time we get towards having that next discussion about this particular in any depth. So it's Regulation 18. The test for me and each member of the group, and we don't have a party whip on this, it's up to individual councillors how they choose to vote on this tonight and the areas they represent. The test for me has to be what will change. It's the point that was being made. If we don't listen, if we don't bring in the evidence, if we don't have those discussions with communities, how do we know we're going in the right direction? So the test has to be, what's the change at the end when we get down that particular road? And there's still some way to go. It's funny, the last local plan, we still had to wait for the integrated transport strategy. Guess what? We're still waiting for the integrated transport strategy. Sorry, this one, the new one, the LTP4. You know, it is those particular ones. And we put forward an amendment at the last local plan, which was about, you know, about that sort of thing, which, you know, was defeated at the time. But, you know, so it's the impact. We need to see the evidence coming forward. And I'm quite clear from my personal position, my voting record and what I've done over the Rainsbrook Valley. I know what my position is about the Rainsbrook Valley, and I don't want anybody in this chamber out there or anybody else saying, you know, or you're flip-flopping or you're changing. Because I can tell you I've been consistent and I'll continue being consistent. And we brought forward particular ideas on the Rainsbrook Valley, and I want to see an updated landscape sensitivity study, not on individual sites, but actually on the valley. Totally. Then I want to see a statement of understanding with Northamptonshire Council, West Northamptonshire, across the other side, of an understanding that that area, that valley, will never be built on. Never. Because it's such a valuable site and a valuable outlook to that area. So I'm quite happy to join you, Councillor Daly, Councillor Picker and others, and go down that road. And I have no doubt on April the 1st at 7:30, probably at the Bell Inn, we'll both be on the same platform answering questions about this particular element to it. Because the whole point is, it's a process. And we need to engage with that process. All of us, everybody up there, out there, engage with it, please. Because if you don't engage, you then can't really have a go about it afterwards. Because there will be change, I can assure you of that, certainly from my position, and I know speaking with my group members, they're looking for change as well. So this is not a perfect plan, but we need to go through the process to get there. Because if we don't, all you've done is open up the doors to developers and development, and they can just come in here and the planning inspectorate will say, yes, that's it. You can go ahead and build, just build, build, build. Well, that's wrong, because we all know, and it's been mentioned, we need the infrastructure, we need the other bits and pieces that fit around that, and we need the communities. And just a little story, got just 2 minutes, is I was on a new development recently, and as you know, I've got to mention the almshouses. Somebody contacted me from a flat, 77 years old, who's ended up in a flat on a new development, nothing around him, can't drive, has disabilities, and he's saying, I can't survive here. We're not having developments which are going to be like that. We need to ensure that any future development through this plan, through the process that we're going to use, through the National Planning Policy Framework and others, through the process, that we actually end up with better communities, better development and better planning. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. And thank you, Councillor Roodhouse, for that. And just to, I guess, raise a point that echoes some of the points that Councillor Roodhouse has said, I'm aware that a proposal's been made to pause the process to the local plan. Now, we've got a hard deadline for submitting a local plan, which is December 2026. And as we all know, time flies way too fast, and that'll be here before we know it. Pausing the plan puts rugby at risk. Having a local plan in place gives us a framework for development in the future, and it gives us control as to what that looks like. If we miss that deadline, there's a lot of risk for the area. If we don't have a plan in place before devolution, we risk not having one for many, many years. And if we look to Northamptonshire, that's the position they're in at the moment. It would also leave us as an outlier in Warwickshire if we did not have a plan in place. As some of my other colleagues have mentioned, not having a plan in place leaves us open to speculative development, which would be much harder to resist. In addition to this, as Councillor Edwards has said and Councillor Roodhouse has said, we've inherited a housing supply that barely meets the regulations that are required. Without a plan in place, we're at risk of being unable to resist applications from sites that we know are unpopular, and we believe that sites are already gearing up to have applications made. Having a local plan supports us to achieve the regulations and being able to resist those effectively. If we don't have a plan in place, we risk losing control of this precious thing. The best way to have control, as many people have mentioned this evening, is to participate in the process. And like others, I call on everyone in the gallery, online and across the entire borough to please, please, please participate in this open and genuine consultation process. Thank you.
Councillor Parker.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I first have a plea for other councillors. I've got some comments from Councillor Garcia, who's been called away on compassionate leave and has asked me to read them. They're not my comments, they are hers. But if I'm not, if councillors don't feel that that's appropriate, I'll just contain my remarks to...
That's fine, Councillor Parker.
Thank you. So, even when called away, and she's been called abroad on compassionate leave, her thoughts were with her constituents. And as you know, she represents the Binley Woods and Revel ward, which also covers Brinklow village. And I read, I'm very concerned about the forthcoming plan, especially in the loss of Greenbelt, which should always be our point of last resort. The housing earmarked for Brinklow not only doubles the size of the village, it's offering no infrastructure and is not in a sustainable location. Any children living in these new houses will have to be bused to their primary and secondary schools, never mind the added pressure it puts on our already busy roads. The plan may well have been done by officers, but I would suggest that their remit was to find sites that would come through the process rapidly, not sites that were necessarily best for the borough of Rugby. There are many brownfield sites available that would include the proper infrastructure and are a lot more sustainable. Indeed, Rounds Gardens, which has already been cleared, has not been included. I am conscious that this is a Labour and Liberal Democrat plan, and I ask you to reconsider and not use party politics to push this through. Those are her remarks, and I offer them in the spirit with which they were sent. I'm going to keep it very brief. Bilton has done its bit for housing in Rugby. We have 5,000 coming on the edge, and my heart dropped when I saw Fenley Field because I'm biased. I hope that remaining little pocket was safe, but I'm sad to see it here. And I concur that it's all about what our residents want us to do. And I'll do what I do, is ask, listen, and bring forward those comments and concerns when when they appear. So that's a personal plea. Halwyn Road's done enough, surely, to goodness. But that's my thoughts. But you know me, I couldn't not comment on certain comments made tonight in light of what's coming up on the agenda after this debate finishes. And Councillor Edwards, you are so right. You know what? There are lots of views in the world. Awful views, contemptuous views. But I will fight to my last breath for the right to say them. And I find it desperately ironic that later on tonight we're going to be debating whether we choose the channel with which people can air those views by banning Twitter from the chamber.
Point of order, that's off
You
topic.
couldn't make it up. Sorry, did somebody speak? I wasn't the only person who heard that. Sorry.
Sorry, I raised a point of order that is off topic.
It's about consultation. You know as well as I do the irony of talking about listening to people when you are trying later on to close down one of the channels in which debate is hosted.
Let's have that debate at the proper point in the agenda.
Okay, let's wait for that topic in the...
I'm happy to sit down. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sayani.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to keep it really brief, but one very important point I think we need to think about. I actually came across a lady, and she was a single mother, and she was going to lose her home in 30 days. She had 30 days in that home. And then she was scanning through all the Orbit homes, all the homes, and every time she went for a house, it was gone. And it just literally, she was just doing it for weeks because she was desperate. And also, her children, think about it, her children, what would be the impact on them in the home, that instability? So we sometimes have to get the balance right. And balance, I think, in this is very, very important. And we've got this opportunity now to have this consultation so everybody can actually participate, can engage, and we can actually review all these things and come to a good balance for those who are struggling, who need homes, who need a home. And you know, if you don't have a home, it impoverishes your quality of life. And if it impoverishes your quality of life, it means your children, antisocial behaviour. We see that on our streets. We're seeing a lot of things. It has a knock-on effect. So I think in many ways it's really important that we get the balance right, and this I see as an opportunity for consultation so that everyone gets to engage and everybody's voices are heard.
Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have some serious reservations about a few of the proposed sites in this preferred options local plan, but I want to focus on the two proposed sites in Hillmorton, which is the ward that I both live in and represent as a borough councillor. I understand that we're at the early stages of this local plan process, and I understand that not all of the proposed sites will make the final cut, that's clear. But what I can't understand is why these sites have been included at all. An application for 130 dwellings on the Kilsby Lane site was refused in 2022 because, and I've lifted this straight from the refusal document, the proposed development would have a significant and adverse impact on the character and appearance of the landscape in this location. An application for 113 dwellings on the Barbie Lane site, which was alluded to earlier, was refused in, I think, 2017 for exactly the same reason. And now we have here in front of us this evening a proposal to build more than twice the number of dwellings across both sites. Maybe it's because this is my first local plan, which is quite exciting, I must say. Or maybe it's just because I don't fully understand it. But when did significant impact on landscape become so insignificant that these sites are included on a preferred options local plan? I don't know. I mean, if these sites were approved, it would cause irreparable harm to the Rainsbrook Valley. We've mentioned it previously. There's clearly great concerns about the Rainsbrook Valley, and I share those concerns. And to me, it sets an unwanted precedent for encroachment into highly sensitive landscape, which has also been mentioned. This on top of additional pressure on what I see as an already struggling road network and local amenities. For these reasons, and the reasons highlighted by my colleagues in the chamber this evening, I'm sorry, but I can't vote to approve this local plan. So, thank you.
Councillor Mackenzie.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to, I got into planning. I got into being a councillor because I absolutely hated the South West Rugby allocation. Absolutely hated it. It's a piece of land I love. I love walking there. I love the woods. And I really felt we could do so much better. And I have got so many things I could say on all of this. I want to talk about, I want to talk about country parks. I want to talk about let's tackle fuel poverty and environment by having better housing standards, because the housing standards are poor. I walk around communities and they don't have a single garden and they're playing out. I've got seen toddler toys on the edge of the road because the housing has no gardens. But I'm not going to talk about any of that, actually. I'm not going to talk about any of that because I could go on and I'll break my 5 minutes very quickly. But what I wanted to raise, actually, is first of all to say the Liberal Democrat group does not have a whip over planning. So there's no whip here tonight from our side about how we vote. We vote how we choose to. But I am really concerned about what I'm hearing from across the chamber. And that is you voting against consulting. I understand what you're saying. You don't like all the allocations, and that is a huge topic. And there, I don't like a lot of the allocations, and I really didn't like the allocations you guys voted through in the last local plan. Well, as a Tory administration, Councillor Parker, not looking at you specifically, I was looking at my notes, and you happened to be in line rather than anything else. This is about voting to consult. It's not about voting to concrete over anything. It's not about voting to say we're actually going ahead with any of these sites. It's about actually giving people a chance to be consulted. We didn't have to do this stage. But the first round, we extended the consultation period. The second round, we're extending the consultation period. We only legally have to do 6 weeks. We're doing 8 weeks because we recognise there's Easter in there. And the other one, we recognised there was Christmas in there, so it got longer as well. We do actually genuinely want to hear from residents. We do genuinely want to hear from businesses. We do genuinely want to hear from everybody. Last time round, all kudos to our officers who went and stood in places like supermarket lobbies to highlight that there was a consultation going on so that more people would engage in it than who otherwise might have, because they're not members of Rugby About Town Facebook group. They're not politically engaged. They're not necessarily seeing it. And they did a fantastic job of trying to get that message out there. And I'm grateful for any mechanism that amplifies any voice to say, consult, speak to us, show us, tell us. And there were some amazingly useful responses that came back from the first one. Sorry, Councillor Ridges, am I saying something really funny? Okay, I will carry on then, as you are laughing. It is just really important. And so I'm really saddened. I'm really saddened to hear that we've got colleagues in this chamber who are going to vote against consulting. I'm so sorry that you want to shut down this conversation, actually, and say, I don't want to consult, and shame on you, honestly. Shame on you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was quite involved in the last local plan, as were a number of other members here. I think the interesting thing was we do want as many people to get involved in the process as is possible. My understanding is that there were about 3,500 submissions for the last local plan, and I hope we see the same again for this local plan. The other thing you ought to consider doing is actually going along to the hearing in public with the inspector. It is really enlightening. You will learn a lot. The inspectors are pretty tough birds. They don't let the officers get away with anything they're not allowed to. They can't, no if and buts and maybes, the inspector will take it out. So there is quite a bit of involvement for you as ordinary rank and file members. The interesting thing is myself and Councillor Lewis attended the hearing in public, as did former Councillor Robertson. Unfortunately, we were the only 3 councillors who got involved in that process. So, again, I think the other thing is to look at is, again, houses in multiple occupation. It was discussed with the inspector, but there was no representation locally at that hearing, which is why it's now, hopefully you'll get it right this time and make sure you do have somebody there at the hearing in public to make your representations. There are Rainsbrook Valley. I'll deal with that one because it's not in the green belt. It is open countryside. And some of us have been arguing since some of these councillors was in short trousers that the Rainsbrook Valley should be a countryside parkland to make the most of its landscape value. I remember going out there with one BBC reporter who called it a quintessentially English landscape. And it is. There's nowhere quite like it in this borough. So, and again, I think that's why some of us argued it. So, please, I'm really sad to see that this is being weaponised already and not being used as an opportunity to engage with rugby and rugbyans and this community to more deeply than just say, oh, well, we can stall it here or put it off there. You can't. This is a very quick process. We will soon be at that inspector's hearing more quickly than you can imagine. So please, if you're watching this at home and you're concerned about something, get it on a piece of paper, get it into our offices. We really do want to see those submissions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Carradine.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for this opportunity. This is my second year in this chamber, and this is the first time I'm seeing too many people here. I'm very, very happy to see you all, and I'm happy to welcome you all for this chamber today. And at the same time, I'm also welcoming all the people who are watching this on YouTube. My point today is I'm going to echo Councillor Alison Livesey's point. Education is very important. I believe education is a fundamental right, and everyone has to have education. But in our ward in Cotton Park, our children are shipped to different places to get that education. And as councillors, we are here struggling to get a school for Cotton Park for a long time. And every time when the school talks comes up, we are shut down, saying that there is no necessary for a school in the north of Rugby. And that's the main problem here, Mr. Mayor. I have 3 children, all at the age of secondary school. Think about me sending all 3 of them to 3 different schools in the morning and collecting them from the 3 different schools. It's a logistical nightmare for me. If I had a school in Cotton Park, I would have been just sitting there in my house and just watching them coming from school to my house. No, that's not happening because the Warwickshire County Council thinks that we don't deserve a school in our area. The one thing I want to record here today, Mr. Mayor, we are going to ask for a school until we get one. That's important. Now, coming back to the issue of a land, yes, I agree, there was a land allocated to the school in Cotton Park, but the Warwickshire County Council decided that we don't need a school, and they didn't buy it. So the builders took the land back, and that is the reason we couldn't do anything with that land. So now Rugby Brough Council has to find a new land for the school. When Councillor Daly was speaking, he was saying that look at Houghton. They have buildings, they have school, everything. That's the same promise they promised us when we bought the property in Cotton Park. We are going to get a school, we are going to get a park, we are going to get a community center. But all we had is a bunch of houses, nothing more. It's just buildings, nothing more in our area. And we are struggling. And why? It's not our decision to say that we don't need a school. It's the county council's decision to say that we don't need a school. Even today, we have hope that one day the county council is going to look at us and say, oh yeah, you people are, we feel very sorry for you that you don't have a school, so we are going to build school. I'm going to pass here for a dramatic effect, Mr. Mayor. If someone says that, someone from the county council saying that, oh yeah, there we are going to build a school. No, there is no school. And people in my ward genuinely thinking county council has changed their mind and they are going to build a school and they are going to build in the Thomas Cross in Newton. No, it's just a land earmarked there. And we are not just going to build in a flood site. It is going to go through proper consultation process. It is going to go through all the planning committee's decision. And then when it is fit, we are going to build a school there. So things can be different. Right, coming back to the buildings, in my day job, I'm a physiotherapist. I go to quite a lot of houses, particularly most of my clients are elderly. And when I go to quite a few affluent villages around this area, when I ask them where their children are, they say, no, my children are somewhere in the north because they couldn't afford to buy a property here. They're all pushed out. Now we are proposing affordable housing. If we are rejecting it, and where will our children go? And one day we are going to get old, and our children are not going to be there next to us. If something happens to us, it will take around 3 or 4 hours for them to reach here. And how many times they are going to come in a week? Think about it. And I believe another thing sorry, Mayor, I'm just hitting the mic. Another biggest problem is there is a crisis, housing crisis in the country. Just to make a light of it, I can say one of our members, her official residence is our allotment. And still, we are thinking there is no housing crisis, and we want to push all the development from our part. We have to give that to our people. We have to listen to them. We have to see what their idea of when the housing is coming to their area. So we have to give them a democratic process through the consultation. And if people reject this in the consultation, as a group, we are happy to take it. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Mayor. Bye-bye.
Councillor Hassel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am the councillor for Clifton Church over in Newton, and I really would like to stick to just these points at the moment because everything else has already been discussed. With housing demands put on councils by this new Labour government, Warwickshire County Council will now have to provide a new secondary school to accommodate the prospective pupils in the north of Rugby. Before these housing demands came on, they had thought we could expand existing schools to accommodate the children. That is now very probably not the case. The current local plan shows a school in Coton East, which is in my ward, but apparently the site is not now available. I would like to see evidence this is not available because, as Councillor Livesey said, in 2022 it became unavailable. However, the land was reserved on planning application 0787, R20 0787, given approval by Nicola Smith in April 2023, and the land was available. The preferred option for a new school, according to this local plan, is on Newton Manor Lane going towards St Thomas Cross in Newton. This site is not suitable as it is on a hill, is crossed by the Cemex slurry pipe and pylons carrying 400,000 volt electricity cables. Furthermore, pupils would need to access it by cars or buses as it is a very dangerous road for walking and cycling. The suitability of this site should have been scrutinised before being considered a preferred option by the Labour group. I call on the Council to withdraw the local plan preferences until it can demonstrate it can include a secondary school serving all the extra children in the new properties and in an appropriate and sustainable location, preferably in Coton Park East. The preferred plan shows an allocation of 160 houses in Clifton, a village with serious traffic and infrastructure problems, such as poor water services, bad internet and transport, with buses running only every 90 minutes. The area is not suitable for such an increase in housing. One site for 10 houses prescribed for North Road is a poor choice, as North Road has serious parking problems, particularly at school times, and extra traffic will not help. Furthermore, the field allocated is rented to a farmer and only part is suggested for this housing, making it highly probable the number will greatly increase, causing further problems. To add to this, there is shortly an application going to council for 160 houses. This is not included in this local plan. This will create even more problems for a small village without the necessary infrastructure, making it unsustainable. Thank you.
Councillor Gillies, Councillor Hassel, can you just turn your mic off as well, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and it's great to listen to all this debate, isn't it? You know, it's a wealth of education, as you might say. But as you know, Mr. Mayor, I've been a parish councillor since, 1988, would you believe? Just seems like the other day, and a councillor here at the Rugby Borough since 2004. And throughout that time, I have witnessed a great lack of understanding of rural communities by all local authorities, not just this one, but all local authorities. And this needs to improve. An effort has to be made. To begin to understand, firstly, and ideally, listen and support those within those communities who work tirelessly to improve their neighbourhoods and facilities for all to enjoy and benefit, like the work of proactive parish councils and all the volunteers that support those infrastructures and those villages. And just looking in the gallery earlier, I noticed that our gallery is full of people who do just that for their rural communities. And as we gather together as a council tonight, I think we should show our appreciation for the work they do in their villages. Will you join me with a round of applause? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. But, of course, imposing possible massive change on rural communities is far from the ideal, when they will always be open to constructive dialogue, which ultimately leads to best results and outcomes. So my advice is talk to these communities first before you start imposing things on them. At the preferred options stage, we see that there are numerous statements and policies that I could support. And there's lots of policies in there that I can't support. The first one that I can see is the objective. Now, I can support this one. It says support growth in sustainable locations. Policy S1. Development should be at a scale as to the services and the facilities of that settlement. That makes sense. So clearly, when we're talking about the allocations like to Brinklow and Wolvie, that could support some development, and they could, as identified in their neighbourhood plan, and maybe with the proper negotiations at the beginning, they might have had some additional housing, as well as the bit for their neighbourhood plan. But the proposals we have at the scale suggested will be already in conflict with those first two statements, and by the 2016 landscape sensitivity study. So, as far as policy S6 is concerned, that probably needs a bit of a rethink. But there was a lot of other things I was going to say, but we're limited to only 5 minutes. But going through lots of policies, there are policies on climate, there are policies on environment. Some of those are good, some are bad. And I hope everybody, as suggested by Councillor Rooshouse, responds to the consultation, because it's grossly important. But most borough residents, they want to see the town centre flourish. After all, this is the most sustainable location. 710 homes in Wolvie will not support the town centre viability in Rugby, and 415 homes in Brinklow will not improve the waiting times at the doctor's surgery, traffic congestion at the Revel School, Bunks Kirby, or on our other village roads, or the views from the 1,000-year-old Brinklow Castle, where you see views down the ancient Roman road, the Fossway. This Easter day, as on previous Easter days, as the sun rises at around 6:15 a.m, people will gather to take in those precious and historic views. So I invite you all to join me on the 20th of April at 6:15 a.m, followed by refreshments in St John's Church. Now that's a sight to behold, the views from Brinklow Castle. So, Mr Mayor, if the preferred options consultation is approved tonight, I ask officers and influential councillors to re-evaluate those housing numbers prior to publication of a draft plan, and if necessary, allocate another round of consultation prior to the submission to the Secretary of State in order to fine-tune proposals to an acceptable level and location. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mistry. Councillor Mistry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to remind Councillor Picker that meeting he was referring to in this chamber about the local businesses was about him facing a vote of no confidence in the Conservative administration from over 100 local businesses. So just reminding him about that. Anyway, Mr Mayor, this is a serious process that we are going through tonight and the document that we have in front of us. And we have a timeline to follow. There are 5 steps that we need to follow. First one we have just completed, which is Regulation 18, issue and option consultation, which took place between November 2023 to February 2024. It's a long time to get to the first stage. And today we're looking at the second step, Regulation 18, preferred option consultation, which will run after this meeting from March to May 2025 for about 8 weeks. Next step, Regulation 19, consultation on the submission plan, which will run a year from now, February to March 2026. Fourth step, submission to Planning Inspectorate for examination. We're going into 2026, May, June time. And finally, step 5, adoption in the spring or summer of 2027. It's a long way, and we have a lot to put into it to get on it. Some of them across the other chamber have lost the plot. We cannot make changes to the plan after Regulation 19, consultation in February and March 2026, a year from now. We submit the responses to the consultation to the Planning Inspectorate together with the plan. We can also submit suggestion, addition, minor modification to the plan to the Inspectorate. But it is at the Inspector's discretion whether recommend those modifications. So, Mr. Mayor, the current consultation, what we're going to embark on, is important that we still make changes in the responses to all. And this is what some of the members have been trying to tell the members opposite, rather than playing to the gallery. At the examination, the inspector does 2 things. First, Mr. Mayor, assesses the legal compliance of the plan. The part of this that trips up some plans is the duty to cooperate. Example, we have engaged effectively with our neighboring authority on a cross-boundary matters. Secondly, assess if the plan is sound. Soundness is defined in the NFPPF, paragraph 36. Plans are sound if A, they meet objectively assess the development needs. 2, they are justified as an appropriate strategy, taking account of reasonable alternatives and based on proportionate evidence. Thirdly, They were deliverable over the planned period. And finally, they are consistent with the national policy. And finally, Mr. Mayor, as the inspector at examination can try to remedy issues of soundness but not legal compliance by recommending modification to the plan. So please, stick to what we have to do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, you just turn your mic off, Councillor Mystery. Thank you. Councillor Timms.
Thank you. And also thank you to all of you that have come tonight and everybody that's listening at home. You started this meeting by saying, you started this process. Yes, we did, but we started this process based around the town centre regeneration. And none of what you're proposing actually does it. But you want to carry on with it. So, yes, we're all in it together, Councillor Mystery. Yes. And you voted for the last local plan. You voted, didn't you, Maggie? I thought your name was in there. You certainly did, Councillor Edwards. So, and I know you abstained, Councillor Roodhouse. I checked. What we did then left you with the legacy that you only need to build 3,000. That's all you need to do. And you've not put anything in from the town centre. And yet your report says 75% of that could be built in the town centre, the most sustainable place.
A point of order.
It's in the report, Councillor Moran.
It's not, and this is so...
It is.
Sorry, it's not. It's not in the town centre in Rugby, the town, not the centre, the borough, the urban area. The 75% is the urban area, not the town.
OK. Actually, I had written town. I apologise for adding the word centre. Dispersal policy does not work because you end up with overladen infrastructure and that will never be delivered. Warwick and Stratford tried that. They've changed their tune. Completely different this time. Those 3,000 houses will be built in Rugby Town anyway. So actually what you're doing, because it's previously developed land, so actually what you're doing is adding a double whammy into this. So you're going to get those 3,000, then they'll be in the town centre and they'll be in the town, Councillor Moran. But instead of that, you'll also put them all around the green belt. Very odd. I asked for an options and an assessment meeting actually in Brinklow. Little did I know I'd be standing here and they're going to have 400 housing in this preferred options. But nobody would come. I was refused. Brinklow is an absolutely beautiful village with lots of nice facilities that meet the needs of what is there. Yes, they need some affordable housing, and yes, that is something they want to progress. But all the primary school pupils have to get on a bus. They have to go to Monk's Kirby. Something your report says shouldn't happen. And goodness knows what you're going to do about the Tump, because you're going to build straight up to it. One of the sites is right next to it. I think this is the most politically driven plan that I've ever seen, with the Green Belt taking all of the strain from both housing and employment land, despite what councillors might have said in their election material. You have taken out employment sites not in the Green Belt that are closer to Rugby and other cross-border locations, which would give ease of access to work. And the real biggie for me is you're actually pulling out the Anstey site for Sports Direct, taking it out of Greenbelt, and then Sports Direct don't even need to build it, do they? Because they can come back, that land's out of Greenbelt, they can come back and say, We can build what we like now. You've taken it out of Greenbelt. It's in the local plan for employment. And it'll go through a process. We've been there, haven't we, Councillor Roodhouse? It'll go through a process. And whatever was agreed at that planning permission, which, Councillor Moran, you actually moved for approval. So you're actually giving the Greenbelt a double whammy here. And you don't need to do it. And actually, you don't need to do the preferred options in this way. You could actually just pull this and say, let's have a little bit of a discussion of the evidence base. Let's talk about these housing numbers. Let's do what we did last time and go and talk to the parish councils in the main rural settlements and say, these are the sites that came forward. These are the ones that we think could be developed. What do you think? Why don't you go and have that individual discussion? You haven't until now. You've just dumped it on them. It wasn't done like that last time. You could go and talk to them and say, what do you want to happen in your community? How do you think you could help us meet the housing numbers, and what would give you the best for your community? It ain't going to give you regeneration of the town centre, by the way, and it's not going to give you a school in north of Rugby. But it would at least show that you were close to your words and wanting to protect the green belt, not just saying it to get elected. I will be voting against this because I believe there is an opportunity to do this in a much better way. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking around. Any more speakers? Councillor Willis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, all. My name is Tim Willis. I'm a borough councillor for Woolston and the Lawfords. I'm chair of Woolston Parish Council, and I'm also chair of its flood action group. Just to start, I just want to step back to a time when I was an officer rather than when I was a councillor. I led a housing programme for Warwickshire County Council, extra care housing and specialised housing, and delivered something like 1,000 units of housing across Warwickshire. And I'm a simple soul, and I have simple rules that I follow. And the rules that I followed for all of those schemes that I saw developed were: make sure this is in the right place, at the right time, at the right price, in the right quantity, and at the right quality. I'm very sorry, colleagues, but the preferred option, and I take your reading of what that means, I don't think does it. I think there is still something missing there in terms of the consultation. I think there is a stage to do that, but I don't want to dwell on that. Neither do I want to dwell on Councillor Edwards, the rural. I don't even want to use the word versus urban, because I think that is wrong. But I'm reminded that on 18th of December last year, I sat in as a member of the planning committee, having previously been the vice chair of planning, and actually was fortunate and privileged enough on one night to chair the item for Brandon Stadium, and it was very welcome to come back that night, because that was the night of the Crown of Fields farm. And I was the only rural councillor on the committee that night. And I was a substitute for a substitute. So I think that needs looking at as we go forward, particularly as we move from consultation to rolling out the plan. Enough of that. I'm going to go to the Woolston part and the flood action part, because I think there are some important things here to mention, and my colleague, Councillor Simpson-Vince, raised it earlier. Again, I want to go back in history. I want to go back a short time to the 2nd of January 2024. The floods that hit Warwickshire, and in particular that hit the village that I'm proud to call my home. One of the sites within the preferred option is on Dyer's Lane, the old telephone exchange. Now, that site, which you probably aren't aware of, is earmarked as an extension of the adjacent cemetery. But I will avoid going into inappropriate gallows humour because that just wouldn't be right. But what I will move to is on the 2nd of January 2024, the waters cascaded down Dyer's Lane. If that is developed, where is that water going to go? And again, I think I can give you a hint because at the time, and apologies to officers, this isn't pointing fingers, but the policies within the preferred option, EN6, the flood risk, and I just want to highlight a couple of the issues. Where development is permitted in areas at risk of flooding, it will need, in accordance with national policy and guidance, to be safe for its lifetime without increasing flood risk elsewhere and, where possible, reduce flood risk overall. CL4 in the preferred option draft. Climate adaptation. Vulnerability of the development to flood risk should be minimised in accordance with policy EN6, which I've just read out. I'm going to move to a report that Warwickshire County Council issued in November last year. Their flood investigation report, which they are required to produce after major flood events. That report stated, and at the time, there was a development on our allotment site, now Allotment Drive, and it may have had some impact. That had caused a lot of upset, as you would understand it would do. It was actually this chamber refused the application, and it was actually went to appeal, and the appeal was upheld, and the costs were paid by us, the people of this borough. And the development went ahead, and it's been an upset ever since. But in the report, the flood investigation report, the evidence provided by Warwickshire County Council, now just bear with me. On the new Spitfire development site, an incident occurred in which a Severn Trent water main burst, causing flows to run to the lowest point in the village, Main Street. The Spitfire development is currently under construction and has not yet been connected the surface water drainage system to the site-wide attenuation basin. Therefore, any flows originating on the site were not attenuated within the site boundary and therefore ran off-site and down to the centre of the village. And my words now, subsequently contributed to the internal flooding to 16 properties and external flooding to 11 properties. I've talked about those 16 properties in this chamber before, the young family with twins, and I've talked about this at the Climate Adaptation Cafe. So as we move forward, let's make sure we get this right. And in order to do so, this is a question to all councillors.
Sorry, Councillor Wiss, I just need you to wrap up. Sorry, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, are we sure that the protection afforded to homes and residents by current policies is sufficient, particularly after the storm events of 2nd of January 24 and 6th of January 25? If not, can we, the Borough Council, assure our communities who are either at risk of flooding or where individual properties have been flooded in recent events that planning permissions will not be granted until such time as we can offer this guarantee, i.e. some of those sites will need to be red flagged until we know they're safe. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, Councillor Howling.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm the Bilton Ward Councillor, and I'd like to echo Councillor Parker's comments about the Homestead View Southwest development, that Bilton's getting enough new houses coming its way in the coming years. So I'm pleased there's no extra developments on this plan. I'd like to bring our attention to something that was in Councillor Robinson's actually election paperwork back in 2023, when she states, "Our precious greenbelt is recklessly being risked. Even at a time when the government is announcing changes to the system, Conservatives are ploughing ahead with a new local plan." I would suggest, and I don't like to politicise things too often, but here we are already politicising, that there is an incredible flip-flop in that statement going on right here, right now. I think when we ask the public to get involved in this local plan preferred option consultation, I think the public has been doing that now for a number of days. They're doing it tonight. They're here in number. They were outside in number. The Conservative are representing our constituents, our residents. That's the voice of our residents is what we're saying. For me, this preferred local option I can't vote for today because I've got enough feedback backing me not to vote for this from residents when they're talking about this plan. The sites in it are not fit for purpose. This needs to be rejected today, voted against, reworked and come back with a new plan. Thank you.
Councillor Poole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've listened to all the debate tonight from both sides, all three sides, and I thank my group for speaking on their constituents. But I'm not going to talk about what's happening here. I'm going to talk about your leader, not Mr. Moran. Mr. Mayor, the Labour government, Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, has published a planning and infrastructure bill designed to liberalise planning, the planning rules. So what all you're saying, Councillor Mystery, is could go out the window because you could just wipe that out. Especially these rules on our many rural wards here and in with Rugby Borough. Mr. Mayor, it's abundantly clear that they are trying to silence us and local people on planning. Their new planning infrastructure bill will mean that local councillors will not get a say on the vast majority of planning decisions being made. It is abundantly clear that the Labour government and Labour-controlled councils, and I say councils, will forge ahead with no input from local councils for their councillors for their respective wards. That includes me. It is the democratic right and role of councillors to be involved in the decision-making process of any planning application. Removing the ability for councillors to discuss, debate or vote on key developments in their localities could erode public trust, that's why these people are up here, in the planning system and local government itself. Mr. Mayor, I've been a councillor 23 years for the old Woolston and Binley Woods ward, Woolston and the Lawford wards. And there's been many, many major developments in those 23 years. And I and all my local councillors with me have voted against every major development in those wards. We have lost them all through the major developers going to appeal and costing this council and its members of the constituencies thousands of pounds in money lost to appeals. So I am with my group. I will vote against this decision tonight and move that it's moved to another date.
Just on that point, just because I think it's really important that everybody's having their say tonight, I think it's important that I say a little bit myself personally, not just as a councillor myself, but as a resident of Long Lawford. So obviously I've seen the... Shouldn't really? No?
Point of order.
Sorry, I never was. I never went to any group meetings. I never took part in any committee meetings.
I'm talking about group meetings. When you sat in that chair, Councillor O'Rourke.
Can we just leave the solicitor to decide?
Okay, I'm being told legally that I can't. So, are there any more speakers on that note? Councillor?
Yes, thank you.
Maura?
Thank you. The reasons we should all go into public life is to try and do our best to serve our local community. And I'm, as you may have seen, actually genuinely quite angry of what's happening in this process. Because it has been shamelessly politicised 6 weeks before an election. Now, you could say it was naive to even enter it into this time, but here we are. But it's being done so shamelessly and treating residents with such contempt that it's fortunate to have this opportunity to make that clear. First, I'm not going to say a single word against anybody in the gallery expressing their concerns or outside or online. I've been there. I've only been a councillor for 2 years. I've led some of the biggest objections campaigns to developments in this town. So I don't understand, I'll never use the word NIMBY. Every person has the right to defend their home. Of course they do. But the campaigns and the victories that with groups that I worked with were always evidence-based. So understanding the process and not listening to untruths is so important. You have to get into the process. And on that, officers have acted with absolute integrity. To suggest otherwise is unacceptable. We've got some brilliant staff in Rugby, and I'm proud to defend them. Now, I am not wanting to concrete over fields. The fact is, as has been said, I'm legally obliged to sign off a compliant plan. If we don't, it is an absolute free-for-all. So therefore, we have to get the best plan possible. In terms of the numbers you've heard, Labour increasing housing targets for Rugby, not true. In this plan, we were looking at 3,338 new homes. The rest is already planned. Under the old NPPF, National Planning Policy Framework, the previous administration would have had to find 5,795. That's 40% more than we're looking at now. Now, this process is far more complex than a headline on Facebook. The source for those numbers is the Council's Development Strategy team, and they know what they're talking about. But let's also be clear, the approach to this plan, and what I've heard now, mudslinging, urban, rural, politicising, absolutely unacceptable. Mr. Mayor, we are absolutely looking to favour and promote brownfield land first. Not only do we want to, but we have to. It's a basic legal requirement of every planning policy framework set out in paragraph 124. We have not, and we would not, turn down any brownfield site in the town centre. More than that, we're actually rolling up our sleeves to talk to owners and developers to bring them forward. But amongst the most serious of the misrepresentations so far tonight, by opposition councillors, is this mythical report from 2022 about 2,000 homes in the town centre and how we're ignoring it. Absolute bonkers. Before I get into the fact of it, next time you go into the town centre, have a look around, tell me where you're going to find 2,000 properties, unless you go 200 stories up in the air. That number was mistakenly quoted from a Conservative commissioned report from Allies and Morrison that I found out, by the way, cost this council £271,000. And you know the best bit? Has no basis in delivery. If it had any legal standing and the council had spent that much money, we'd have to use it. But we didn't. It was a vanity project from the councillor concerned. So let me say this clearly. We are doing all we can to bring forward brownfield and urban sites, including Rounds Gardens. That's what we're working on now. Detailed conversations with site owners is part of that process. It's interesting to note, by the way, the current plan did not allocate a single new home in the town centre. That's the definition of hypocrisy. Now, I appreciate the Rainsbrook Valley is one area that's aroused a lot of interest. I've seen it myself. It's beautiful. The last administration did not do one thing to protect it. They did not seek a Greenbelt review. They did not commission detailed studies. They did nothing. Or actually, they did something.
Sorry, point of order. It was a green and blue infrastructure corridor in the extant local plan, which was successfully defended at appeal.
no. If the last administration had instigated a full green belt review and put the Rainsbrook Valley into the green belt, then it couldn't be touched in this way. It wasn't, and it didn't. Now I've lost my train of thought. But what they did do, Councillor Timms, you allocated hundreds and hundreds of acres of other green fields.
Please. There was a green belt review that was undertaken before the last local plan. It actually proposed some areas to come out of the local plan, which the inspector put back in. So that green belt review, at that time, you weren't allowed to switch land around and you weren't allowed to redesignate land as green belt. So can this be verified by our housing officers?
Okay, I think the point of order has been made there quite rightly.
I stand by the principle that more could have been done, and I'm sure we can debate that at length over the coming weeks. But as I was going back to Councillor Timms, the level of development on green fields around Rugby was monumental. This council used to boast in the last couple of years about being the fastest growth town in the country. It was a boast. Now, they're telling us not to consult. I have not shied since being leader mid last year from dealing with difficult sites. Brandon Stadium has been mentioned. 25 acres of brownfield land, closed since 2016. It has neither come forward for housing, 365 homes, or returned as a stadium. Do you know why? Because two councillors couldn't work out which way to go. It's been left derelict. Since taking office, I've met the owners, the campaigners, to sort it out one way or the other. Now, I appreciate residents are concerned about the impact of communities in the villages and a lack of infrastructure. Well, in terms of healthcare, it was weeks or a month that St Cross threatened to close a ward. We didn't go there for a photo opportunity. We worked legally, professionally to threaten legal action, to get out of them the facts and the evidence.
Councillor Morin, can I just ask you to wrap up? Because I know we've added time on as well. We have added a lot of time on.
Okay. You don't want to hear the facts. We've worked through, as best we can as this administration, to bring forward money. Community infrastructure levy is the money that delivers those points. But after 25 years of poor governance, it's an uphill battle. So, if I'm going to have to summarise now, we are a proactive council, and we'll do what's right for the borough. We have already shown across many other areas to deliver where the last administration did not. So all I say, please, residents, get involved, but do not judge us by the standards of the last administration.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just looking around the room. Is there anybody that hasn't spoken who would like to speak? Or is that everybody covered? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, Councillor Robertson, it's your right to reply. We're going to add a little bit extra because there's a lot to go through. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Thank you, everybody. So, where to start? I think I'll start with the later comment from Councillor Howling, suggesting that I was a hypocrite. Maybe he wasn't listening at the start of my comment tonight when I stated quite clearly the reasons why we are in the predicament that we are in. Myself, I campaigned partly because of the bad development that we've had in Rugby, and the point that you were making was, I was concerned about the reckless risk that was being taken with the Greenbelt. And that stands. And we are now experiencing the outcome of the decisions that your party made at the time, which was to progress and put this out to the market for the market to decide before you had any kind of strategy to bring forward brownfield sites. Now, so coming to that and the points that Councillor Moran has made and the points around the town centre. So we have an administration that is seriously expecting us to believe that you had a plan for town centre regeneration. Ever, in the last 2 decades. And to say on paper that, you know, in our issues and options, we're going to regenerate town centre. Honestly, folks, we're going to put in some accommodation in the town centre. How many times have we heard that? That's the reason why I came forward, because we've been hearing this for decades, and we've been watching our town centre just go to ruin. So if you were true to your word when you wrote those words on that page, you needed to get out and you need to roll your sleeves up. You need to talk to the landowners. You need to be engaging the potential developers to bring forward viable sites that can then be developed. That didn't happen. We've had since June last year. It is now happening. And to me, I am keeping a very tight eye on these numbers. Now, at the moment, we have a 9% leeway in the numbers of houses that we have indicated. Officers recommend about you go to about 10%. That's quite a standard, as I understand. Previously, it was pitched at more like 17, 20% because they really loved to boast about all that development. We're keeping it more conservative than that. And if we can get, in the next year, if we can get those commitments through and we can make those brownfield sites viable, which we are working seriously hard to do, we can adjust the numbers. And that is the whole point of this process. It's all consultation and it is all up for grabs. And we will be working to that because I too love the countryside. I'm a village kid. Okay? So, on that, villages then. So we had, you know, comment about urban, rural, all of this. So still, 75% of the plan is for development around Rugby town. So, you know, and it's so divisive. It's awful. It's awful to hear that, and it shouldn't be politicised in that way. We should be taking care of all of our residents. So, Councillor Gill, yes, you mentioned about parishes and listening to the parishes. I understand that you have been the parish champion for some years. So, you know, I'd be very interested to hear what ideas you have for championing the parishes. And if you, again, feel that they have been not well treated, then we've had 9 months, you had decades. Councillor Russell can't understand why these Hill Morton sites are included, stating previous reasons for referrals. Why are these sites being included? Lots of calls about why are these sites? What was the strategy? We never heard about this. We don't know what's going on. It's a matter of public record that we had Planning Services Working Group. Planning Services Working Group did see the results of the call for sites. They were told by officers the process that would be gone through, looking at flood and all the available evidence that is available so far. And that process, okay, they came back and they said to Planning Services Working Group, we could do a big development like Lodge Farm. Okay, we could do that, and that would you know, cover most of our housing need. Or we can have what's called a dispersal strategy. Okay. Now, Lodge Farm was, like I said, it was thrown out by an inspector previously, like, you know, some of these other things that have been thrown out by an inspector previously. So, and I have lost my string. I'll get there. So, Lodge Farm, yeah. So, we are, sorry, it is quite late on, isn't it? 2.5 hours in. Totally missed the point. Sorry, folks. Can't understand why the Hill Morton sites are included. Okay, yeah. So it's all based on the evidence we can get so far. Now, we can't get all of the evidence from all our consultees yet. We can't get all the evidence around schools. We can't get all the evidence on highways. We just can't get all the evidence until we go to consultation. Now, what our colleagues opposite the chamber are grumpy about is that they have not been allowed to choose the sites. That's how it worked previously. That's what I was told. Why can't we all get together as councillors? We'll look at what the officers are saying and we'll choose. And that's how they've protected their interests in the past. We've said no. We know the evidence. The evidence currently points to either the dispersal strategy or Lodge Farm. Can we agree as a Planning Services Working Group that actually a dispersal strategy would be a more appropriate strategy? Because Lodge Farm is it would compromise the Rainsbrook, and also it would compromise the whole process. Because what this administration did, we relied on Halton, which is great, and Councillor Picker, I can't fault you. There's lots of good things to say about Halton. Nobody has mentioned South West Rugby. They've not said how wonderful that is.
Objection, Mr. Mayor. I spoke, and you know I said about South West Rugby, that the people of Bilton have done their bit, and I was saddened when I saw Fenley Field appear on the preferred options list. I will not be accused, as well as my fellow councillor, that I'm not speaking for the people of Bilton. Please retract.
That's not what I said. What I said is nobody is speaking up to say that South West Rugby was a good development.
I don't think you'd find anyone in the history of mankind thinking it's a good development.
Councillor Parker.
And thank you. And that's my point, precisely my point, okay? South West Rugby is a really poor development decision. Ancient woodland, yeah? And we are currently struggling to progress that because it's not viable, because the plan was not well thought through. That's why we are in jeopardy now of having a 5-year land supply. So we can't, it is not possible, legally, morally, ethically, it's just not possible to go down the route of another massive, what you would call sustainable urban extension, because it isn't sustainable, it's not achievable, it's not deliverable. And if we put forward a plan like that, all of your sites are up for grabs because there's no legal basis on which we can reliably defend all of those sites. So please work with us, because through consultation, which is what they're objecting to, consultation, where's the threat from consultation, right? Through consultation, we can get the evidence. We can get the evidence. We can get the evidence. We can get the evidence that we need to make the best of it, and we're having to make the best of the decisions they've been making for the last 2 decades and failing.
Okay, so normally we've got 2 more items on the agenda before we go to vote, but I'm conscious that, I'll read this statement out. So, in light of the length of the debate on this item and considering those sat in the chamber, I would like to move as chair to take a separate vote on this item rather than en bloc with the remaining cabinet reports. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor
Thank you very much. I'll call a recorded vote, Mr. Mayor. I do have a second and a third.
I'll second.
So I'm going to hand over to the Acting Chief Exec to do recorded vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll call councillors' names individually. If I could ask that you respond with a for, against or an abstain. So starting with Councillor Barnett.
For.
Councillor Bennett. For. Councillor Brown.
For.
Councillor Davey.
Against.
Councillor Dumbleton. For. Councillor Claire Edwards. For. Councillor Sam Edwards. For. Councillor Freeman. For. Councillor Gillias. Against. Councillor Harrington. For. Councillor Hassel.
Against.
Councillor Henderson. For. Councillor Howling. Against. Councillor Caradier.
For.
Councillor Dale Keeling. Against. Councillor John Keeling. Against. Councillor Lawrence. Against. Councillor Lewis. For. Councillor Livesey. For. Councillor Maudis.
Against.
Councillor Mackenzie.
For consultation.
Councillor Mystery. For. Councillor Morin. For. Councillor New. Against. Councillor O'Rourke. For. Councillor Parker.
Against.
Councillor Picker. Against. Councillor Poole.
Against.
Councillor Robinson.
For.
Councillor Roothouse. For. Councillor Russell. Against. Councillor Sanderson. For consultation. Councillor Sayani. For. Councillor Simpson Vince. Against. Councillor Srivastava. For. Councillor Thomas. For. Councillor Timms. Councillor Ward.
Against.
And Councillor Willis.
Against.
Thank you. So that's 22 votes for the motion and 17 votes against.
Okay, so on that, the motion is carried. And I will say, members of the public in the gallery, you're welcome to leave if you like. You're also welcome to stay. It's entirely up to you. But we'll give everyone a few moments. If everyone would like yeah, we'll have an adjournment for 10 minutes. Okay. Can I just ask oh, is that working? Can I ask everyone to get back in their seats? That's not working, is it? Hello? Yeah, I will. First time I've used this. Yeah, the mic's not working. I'll see if. Oh, that's working now. Are we all ready to go again? We'll start the live stream. We all ready, everybody? Okay. Yeah. Okay, welcome back everybody. I know we've had to lose a couple of councillors who've had to leave. I don't know if that needs to be minuted. Councillors Dale Keeling, John Keeling and Parker. Yep, I think that's everybody. So on to item 2. So Councillor Claire Edwards, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report titled Proposed Housing Allocations Policy 2025?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second it and reserve my right to speak, and I hope not.
Oh, sorry, Richard.
So
I apologise. Sorry.
So.
Just desperate to leave.
Okay, so I think that was Councillor Harrington seconding. Yeah. Okay. So Councillor Claire Edwards, would you like to introduce the report?
I will. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Really, I won't make this long because I think it's way past my bedtime. I don't know about anybody else. I really want to thank officers for their hard work in putting together a new allocations policy. I could wax lyrical for hours about the work that they've done and the leadership role that they have brought to us in developing over the last 12 months. I must thank Councillor New for her support as portfolio holder shadow. I think that's the right phraseology. And spokesperson, yes. I must stop calling people furniture, yes, and not calling them chairs. And to members past and present who've contributed to this. We've looked at it at Cabinet, we've looked at it in all member workshops, we've also looked at it as scrutiny. I think it's important that we put on record our thanks to everybody who's contributed to this. And I really think this is a way forward. It's a comprehensive document that gives us lots of support in improving housing in Rugby. It will also improve housing moving forward, and I'm really pleased about it. Thank you.
Are there any speakers? No, doesn't look like it. So I think we'll just move straight to the vote. Oh, sorry, apologies, we've been thrown off. So actually we'll go on to the next one. So Councillor Claire Edwards, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 3 of the report, titled Homelessness Strategy and Action Plan 2025 to 2029?
I so move.
Who will second the motion?
I'll second the motion if there is one right to speak.
Councillor Claire Edwards, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you very much. Once again, homelessness strategy and action plan for the next few years. I think it's really important again to thank officers. I won't go into a lot more detail, but we are doing a lot of good work on tackling homelessness. But there is still a lot more to do. Thank you.
Councillor Roodhouse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is an important report, and I think there is a lot of good work that's gone into this. To be homeless is something which you wouldn't want to wish on many people at all. I wanted to refer, as I declared an interest, to the health watch work that we've done around this, and actually access to GPs and to health services, and particular areas are there. And there are issues still going on for homeless people who cannot access healthcare and those elements, and I just hope through the portfolio holder and the strategy we can actually ensure that that's bolted in. And that's why it's important to actually also get the supported accommodation and the move through from this, so we can actually move people through that mechanism, which I know Hope 4 and others are trying to do. So I welcome it, but we do need to ensure that the health services are lining up behind it. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? No. Councillor Claire Edwards, you're right to reply.
Thank you very much and for those comments. We have for quite some time had some outreach nursing available to support homeless people in the borough. That funding comes to an end at the end of this month, and officers are working at pace to get an alternative to come through. I am very conscious that life expectancy for people who are living on the streets or sofa surfing, their life expectancy is mid-40s. The rest of us can expect to live till at least late 70s, early 80s, depending on our health conditions that we deal with. It is imperative that we get that health care to people who need it and not expect them to try and get to their own dentist or a GP, because those pathways don't work for them. And we have a duty account, I think, to make sure that those facilities and dedicated support is absolutely there. So I absolutely agree, and thank you for raising it.
Thank you. Okay, so I will now submit for confirmation and adoption of the whole report, with the exception of item 1, as we've already voted on that. So all those in favour, please show. That's carried unanimously. Okay, on to item B, to receive the report of Audit and Ethics Committee dated the 6th of February 2025. In submitting the report of Audit and Ethics Committee, if members wish to raise questions or to comment, will they please indicate they wish to do so when I call the item. Councillor Mistry, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 1 of the report titled 2025-26 Capital and Treasury Management Strategy incorporating the annual investment strategy?
That's a long one, isn't it, Mr. Mayor? It'll be short. I move the recommendation of the Audit and Ethics report. I'll leave it at that.
And who will second the motion?
I'll second it, and I'll reserve my right to speak. That's no length whatsoever.
Councillor Mistry, would you like to introduce the report?
Oh, Mr. Mayor, I think enough said in there.
Are there any speakers on this item? No? Okay, well, we'll go straight into the vote. We're going straight to the vote on this one? Sorry. So we'll go on to the next item. So, Councillor Mistry, will you move the confirmation and adoption of item 2 of the report titled Risk Management Strategy?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, move the recommendation of the Audit and Ethics report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And who will second?
I'll second it, Mr. Mayor, and I'll reserve my right to speak, though probably not.
Councillor Mistry, would you like to introduce the report at all? Or? Leave it to Councillor Roodhouse, who sits on it. I've got a better handle than I have.
Okay, Councillor Roodhouse.
Yeah, just a quick one. I couldn't let this one really go past, really, with the risk management strategy. I would urge all members to have a look at the risk management. We've just had that long debate previously. That is risk management, and it'll be on the risk register going forward. So it is an important element within what the council, how the council operates. And it shouldn't be just, oh, it's another one of those. Actually, it puts the risks and what we hold those risks for as elected members going forward corporately as well. So it's an important document, and Audit and Ethics does look at it in some detail. But I would urge members to have a look at the risk register because the local plan will be on there.
Are there any other speakers on this? Yeah. Okay, I will just say a right to reply, Councillor Mistry, if you'd like to.
No, Mr Mayor, thank you.
Okay, I'll now submit for confirmation and adoption of the whole report. Those in favour, please show. Okay, the motion is carried, that's unanimous. On to item 7, to receive the reports of officers. The next item is to receive the report of the Acting Chief Executive, set out at item 7A of the agenda. The report concerns the English Devolution White Paper and local government reorganisation in Warwickshire. Councillor Morin, will you move the report?
Thank you, and appreciate you trying. It's Morin, Michael Morin, thank you. But appreciate your efforts. We spoke earlier because my dad had been watching, so thank you very much indeed. Conscious, it's very, very late tonight, so I won't go on in detail with this. I've got to just, I can't let go of the kind of the irony that...
Can I just ask you to move the report first, and we'll get a seconder?
Oh, yes. it's
Thank
Who
you,
will
Mr.
second
Mayor.
the report?
I second the motion and reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Morin, would you like to introduce the report?
We're getting there. Thank you. I've been thrown off a couple of times. I was going to say it's ironic in terms of the nature of this. We're putting forward this great collaborative piece of work for the interests of the borough. Which is absolutely what we should do. And we had that special council debate, and we all talked about greater efficiencies and clarifying mistruths, that it isn't a takeover by Warwickshire County Council. We start from scratch. It's actually a great genuine attempt or opportunity to create a healthy and a sustainable form of local government. I referenced back the long debate on the local plan, but I guess English devolution doesn't have the votes in it in the coming weeks. So you're not going to make the same kind of comments on social media. So really want to work forward on this. I passionately believe in unitarisation. I think it's healthy. I think we've got to work through a lot of the detail. And bring it on. Thanks.
Are there any speakers? Councillor Picker?
Could I move the amendment that has been circulated, please?
And who will second that?
I'll second the motion, Mr Mayor. Reserve my right to speak.
We're happy to accept.
Okay, you're happy to accept the amendment. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So in that case, I think we should do this as a single debate. Yeah. Okay. Councillor Picker, would you like to introduce it first? Yeah.
It's really has been a long evening. Yeah, I'm grateful to hear that it will be accepted as a friendly amendment. I think, it's the amendment was seeking to broaden the scope of the work going forward, and obviously it is probably the second most important piece of work we'll do, the previous item notwithstanding, so hopefully we can all engage on it.
Are there any other speakers on this? Okay, you're right to reply, Councillor Morin.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. I wouldn't want to pass up this opportunity to highlight quite why I was so keen to take on the amendment in respect of item 5, to work and identify best practice with town and parish councils. Because what's missing within this setup that we have thus far is there's this kind of nascent opportunity for rugby to identify and to work through what a kind of a post-RBC world looks like and how that representation looks like. Clearly, rugby, and we've discussed different settlements, there's a lot of work there to be done. And again, just for the final time for a record, so I'm never misquoted again, I believe passionately in good parish councils. I think the issue is some parish councils either don't have the resources or don't have the, should we say, the positive challenge to do the job effectively. If we're going to a unitary structure, the onus on all levels of administration heightens, and so it would be wrong of me to not make the point that as much as we're going to look to creating an impactful and an important Rugby Town Council, we've got to look at how parish councils are resourced and how they're supported to do their job. Thanks.
Okay, so we're now going to vote with the amendment. So all those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. The next item is to receive the report of the monitoring officer set out at item 7B of the agenda. The report concerns proposed updates to the council's constitution. Councillor Mistry, will you move the report?
Yes, Chair. I move the report as printed. Thank you.
Who will second the motion?
I will second it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Mistry, would you like to introduce the report?
Mr. Mayor, this is ongoing report which is the Constitution Working Group is working, and we are here to support that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a cross-party.
Are there any speakers on this? Councillor Sanderson? Just turn your microphone on, Councillor Sanderson.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I was going through the suggested changes to the Constitution, and ones really did stand out. And that was, I think, the creation of a bit of an urban myth. And this is no disrespect to the current chair of planning, but the chair of planning could be in office for up to 4 years. No, that's a bit naughty. I would suggest that any one of 5 out of the 12 committee members who currently sit on planning committee are more than able and capable of chairing that meeting. We had great guidance from both the legal officer and the senior planning officer. So I don't believe it's as difficult as some would have us believe. Indeed, I would suggest that no chair, a 3-yearly cycle, whether you're the chair of planning, whether you're the chair of licensing, or whether you're the chair of overview and scrutiny, was a long enough term of office for anyone. So I would suggest that think again about this 4-year term of office as chair of planning. I don't think it's required and I don't think it's necessary. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Simpson-Vince?
Yeah, we had, in the Constitution Working Party, we had quite a long debate and we were advised by legal about what should or shouldn't be in there. The 3 years was a completely arbitrary number that was put in quite a long time ago, and so it's part of that whole tidying up the Constitution. 3 years doesn't, you know, councillors are usually on 4-year cycles for things, and so it was felt by the officer that making it 4 just tied it up neatly with everything else. So, so that's why.
Are there any more speakers on this? No. Okay, Councillor Mistry, you're right to reply.
I'm at the mercy of the Constitution Working Group, Mr. Mayor, and I'm not too sure whether take a legal advice. A request has come to look at the amendment, whether that's feasible to go back or not.
Just through you, Chair. My suggestion is that we take the report as printed, but happy to take on board Councillor Sanderson's comments, and perhaps that can go back to the next Constitution Review Working Party to discuss further and feedback to Councillor Sanderson further.
I'm happy with that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so with that as discussed being discussed in a further meeting, apart from that, we're taking a vote on that. So all those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. So the next item is to receive the report of the monitoring officer set out at item 7C of the agenda. The report concerns the appointment of an independent remuneration panel to carry out a review of members' allowances. Councillor Mistry, will you move the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move so.
Who will second the report?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Mistry, would you like to introduce the report?
I had a conversation with the legal officer, and it's something that we regularly have to do it every 5 years, and it's independently run, and we take their recommendation, put to the council, and accept whatever that is, Mr. Mayor. So I move so.
Are there any speakers on this item? No? Okay, in that case, we'll go straight to the vote. All those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. The next item is to receive the report of the Chief Officer for Communities and Homes set out at item 7D of the agenda. The report concerns social housing funding received by the Council. Councillor Claire Edwards, will you move the report?
I will.
Sorry, that just tickled us then. Who will second the motion?
I will second the motion and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Claire Edwards, would you like to introduce the report?
I will, thank you very much, and this is incredibly good news, and my thanks to officers for all their hard work. We made an application for funding support, expected to probably only get 40% of it, but actually got more than 60% of it. So we have agreed to accept nearly £11 million, which we need to match with our reserves. But that 22 million will go towards sorting out the issues that we have with around 1,100 council homes. It'll be used for combinations of things like decarbonisation, insulation, modern heat pumps, and all sorts of bits and pieces, which I won't go into detail because my brain is frazzled because it's gone 10 o'clock. I have to say, this is hugely good news. It means that we can invest in our properties and bring them up, so many more of our properties up to, and increase EPC level C, and it contributes hugely to our climate change and decarbonisation ambitions for this council and for our housing. It is really good news, and I'm really pleased to be able to report that to members.
Okay, are there any speakers on this item? Councillor Daly?
Yeah, I just want to say how surprised I was to read the amount that that had been awarded, because we talked about this climate emergency working party, and I think the general consensus was we probably won't get this much, because I think I remember raising concerns about how much money we would have to put in ourselves, and I don't think we were ever expecting this much. It is coming from the housing revenue account, so actually it sounds like a good use of that money to improve social housing across Rugby.
Are there any more speakers? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to really come back to Councillor Daly, that after 25 years of a Conservative administration, anything is possible. Don't believe what you've seen all those years. This is what happens when you have a more engaged and a fantastic portfolio holder. That is real difference to people's homes, those that need it most in the borough. It's the best piece of news tonight. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers on this? No. Okay, Councillor Claire Edwards, you're right to reply.
Thank you very much. I can't take the credit for this, I really cannot. We have some very effective officers who've worked incredibly hard to get this together. And actually, they have a track record. We're awarded recently the highly commended for the West Midlands Regional Energy Efficiency Awards, and that was for the decarbonisation work that took place in Long Lawford and in Rokeby. Those 110 homes needed attention, and they got it. And you know, we're building on that success. So I'm really pleased to be part of a team that is delivering. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move to the vote. So all those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. We now move on to item 8. So notices of motion pursuant to Standing Order 11. There are 3 motions on notice to be considered this evening. Councillor Mackenzie, will you please move the motion set out at item 8A of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11?
I so move, thank you, Mayor.
Who will second the motion? Okay, Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to introduce your motion?
Thank you, although I'm rather disappointed that Councillor Parker has left the room because I was hoping for a little fiery exchange across the chamber because we've kind of been lacking in those tonight, and I thought we would need something to wake us all up by this point, but unfortunately she's not here. This motion, I want to ask the chamber some questions. What are our values? What do we wish to be aligned with? And where do we choose to speak? And I am going to pick up on Councillor Parker's point, which is speaking isn't the same as listening. And not speaking isn't the same as stifling the debate. And I think there comes a point where you say, who do I wish to align with? And unfortunately, this is a platform, X is a platform that is very much aligned to a person. It's not just a platform. And I don't feel that with the equality and diversity that we try and promote here, with the way we wish to be inclusive and supportive and welcoming and all the other things that actually we wish to align anymore with someone who does Nazi salutes. I think at some point you have to say, I'm not going to speak here, and I don't think as an organisation we should corporately be speaking on this platform anymore. I think it's time to not align with it. And I hope I have the support of the chamber to say actually it's time that we just stop using X. Now I understand we probably want to keep our accounts so that we don't get somebody pretending to be us, but actually we can choose to no longer speak on this platform. And we're not the first to make that decision. Plenty of other people have decided that it doesn't align with their values anymore. But I really feel that the time has come to say actually a line in the sand. This does not align with who we are as a borough council. This does not align with our values as an organisation, and it's time to put that line in the sand and say we are not going to communicate via this platform anymore. Thank you.
Okay, are there any speakers on this? Councillor Bennett?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of second the points Isabel made. I think the real point of issue here is that Twitter is no longer, if it ever was, a reliable information environment. It's really more than anything now a source of misinformation. So for us to be in there and giving it legitimacy effectively, in my view, is no longer something that we can align with. When you look at the sort of people that have been re-platformed, Andrew Tate, Stephen Yaxley-Lennon, the ship has sailed on whether this is an environment where a democratic organisation like the Borough Council should really have a presence. Our residents shouldn't really have to wade through bilge about grace replacement theories and Russian bots to be able to find out when is bins, in my view. So this, and that's before we get into whether we should really be patronising a man who's doing Nazi salutes and subtweeting our Prime Minister about civil war is inevitable in our country. So for me, I think it's a straightforward move to delete the account.
Okay, are there any more speakers on this? Councillor Picker?
I suspect I'm not going to be as fiery as Councillor Parker, but I will do my best. Look, I am unfortunate enough in that I grew up with social media and I don't really use it all that much anymore. They're all pretty awful platforms. They're all algorithmically driven. They're all not great places to be. However, I think we do have a duty to communicate with our residents, and I think we have a duty to do that as broadly as we possibly can. And we've just spoken about the values of consultation and reaching out to residents. I see where you're coming from. I don't agree that being on a platform is a full endorsement of everything that is on that platform, or even the people who run that platform. I think that there are plenty that are not people that I would want to be personally associated with. I think that goes for a variety of social media platforms. So I can't support this, but I do appreciate where you're coming from.
Okay. Councillor Maureen?
We're getting there.
I'm
We're getting there.
trying.
We're getting there. I too am really disappointed that Councillor Parker has gone. And that was a pale imitation, if there's ever an effort of any fiery attempt. Because, again, to echo something that Councillor Mackenzie has once said, this actually is the sort of thing that I became a councillor to do, in a way. I'll caveat that. Because I think this does make a difference. So as a parent of a teenage daughter, a teenage daughter and one just almost 21, I've seen the massive effect of social media day in, day out. And it can cause harm. And free speech does have limits. When it causes harm, or has the potential to cause harm without checks and balances, there has to be some sort of protocol. There has to be. Because society, your technology, I pointed to you, Councillor Picker, forget technology. The idea that our systems of protocols as parent guardians can keep up with the latest algorithms and that, it's not possible. So because of that harm, because of what's happened through recent times of removing moderation policies, of reactivating accounts that are palpably evil, is the only way to describe them, it's important, I think, to, as you say, to align values where we sit. And that's not something that Rugby Brough Council, if it was a newspaper, an old-fashioned newspaper, we wouldn't take space in it. We'd say, no, that causes a harm. So it's a brilliant notice of motion, and I'd be delighted to support it.
Are there any more speakers on this? Councillor Daly?
I just had a quick question for the administration, really. Does anyone have any rough ideas of how many residents actually view or access information or click links to our website using Twitter, X? Just does anyone have any rough ballpark number for how many? I'm not calling on you, I'll be told off again. Does anybody... Just, if we're going to debate this, it'd just be genuinely interesting to know,
Can anybody answer that question? Yeah. Should we hand over to Chief Officer? Yeah.
Although I don't have the number off the top of my head, I will get back to you in the next couple of days. But we do track stats of all the social media posts and website hits and where they have originated from. So I can actually give you those data if you do want them. Thank you.
Councillor Robinson?
I think it's a good question, well made, and we need to look at that data, track that data, irrespective, not irrelevant to that, irrespective of that. I think the point really stands and is well made. I personally decided a while ago it was time to say X to X, and I hope that's one cross in a box we can all agree on.
Are there any more speakers on this? No? Okay, Councillor Mackenzie, you're right to reply.
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to use my right to reply. I'd like to pick up on a point that Councillor Picker made about communicating widely and therefore shutting down a platform. Reduces our communication, and I just wanted to pay my thanks to the officers, because actually we've been really upping the way that we communicate and actually really looking at that very closely. And if you look at the campaign that's gone on with making council tax digital for people and allowing them to pay their direct debits online, we've had billboards, we've had bus signs, we've had all sorts of different ways to reach out to different audiences, and I think we can be really creative. We can use Blue Sky, we can use other platforms, we don't have to align ourselves with X. I understand some people have been using X to access our information, but actually most of us flip between different platforms all the time anyway. So I'm not particularly concerned that people will only be using Access, the source of truth about Rugby Brough Council. They're quite capable of finding us in other forums, and we do reach out to people who are just not digitally included at all, you know, and or who are never going to, however glued they are to their screen, want to look at a Rugby Borough post, to be honest. So, you know, it is about being accessible. I don't wish to stifle debate, but there comes a point for me that enough is enough. And I really feel that we will be ashamed of ourselves if we look back and think we haven't taken this moment. Thank you.
Okay, so I shall now put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please show. All those against, please show. Okay, the motion is carried. Okay, so Councillor Thomas, will you please move the motion set out at item 8B of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11?
My motion is printed.
Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Okay, Councillor Thomas, would you like to introduce your motion?
Thank you. I'll keep it as short as I can. Prostate Cancer UK have highlighted the growing numbers of people who suffer with incontinence issues as a result of prostate treatment. 1 in 8 men will get prostate cancer, and 1 in 3 men over 65 will have incontinent problems. It's important to make life as comfortable and dignified for those who suffer with such problems. Therefore, I ask the Council to support the motion to provide sanitary bins and waste products that can dispose discreetly in a hygienic manner. I believe 9 councils have signed up to this motion, and I hope that you will as well, please. Thank you.
Are there any speakers on this? Yeah, Councillor O'Rourke.
Yeah, I just want to say I wholeheartedly support this notice of motion. I think it's, you know, a step in the right direction. We weren't the first, obviously others have done it already, but it's very much about dignity for people and, you know, for everybody to be treated equally. So thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Councillor Maureen? No.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, almost like what Councillor O'Rourke said. And the again, this is exactly the sort of thing that we can use our sort of power as council, because as much as the specifics of providing bins, what it does in terms of sending out a message and awareness. And that's something that, as a council, we've spoken at length how the council can fill a void in terms of preventative kind of healthcare needs and promoting that type of good behaviour. So the more, you know, kind of irregular sources of information that people get might lead to that message hitting home with somebody. So, again, fantastic. Thank you. Very, very happy to support.
Are there any other speakers on this? Councillor Mackenzie?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm really delighted this has come forward, and I think as the leader of the council, in case I get the pronunciation wrong, has said, this is about us leading the way. This is about us. This is about us leading the way. This is about us setting the debate and saying, actually, come on, organisations, come on, businesses here in Rugby. Each time that men had the equality to have the dignity to be able to deal with medical waste when they're out and about, whether that's at work, whether that's out shopping, wherever they are, they should have the ability to deal with it discreetly and with dignity. And actually, for me, it very much sits with the other motion. It's about equality. It's about saying, actually, let's look at what people's needs are and let's meet those needs and let's lead that debate on equality. Let's, you know, level this up for the men, actually. Let's level it up for you. Women have had access to that for years and years and years. So let's level it up for the men, that they also have the right to have dignity around waste products. Thank you.
Are there any more speakers on this? No, Councillor Thomas. Oh, sorry, Councillor New.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I think this begs the question, what men did before, well, when there is no bins in premises, in any premises really. So I'm hoping that this will be taken on board in as many premises we possibly can, our art gallery and museum, and possibly the sports centre, Diamond Jubilee Sports Centre, and any bit places we can possibly get these facilities for people to be able to use and to have dignity. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Thomas, you're right to reply. So we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour, please show. The motion is carried. That's unanimous. Okay, Councillor Brown, will you please move the motion set out at item 8C of the agenda, notice of which has been given under Standing Order 11.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I so move.
Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, and reserve my right to speak.
Councillor Brown, would you like to introduce your motion?
Yes, I'm going to take half an hour. No, I'll be really brief. You've read what it says. The three things that all of these notices of motion have got in common are that they're all about sending out a message. And you could be sitting there thinking, why the heck is she suggesting that we twin with a town in the Ukraine? They've probably got bigger things on their mind than twinning with rugby, which is blatantly obvious. However, the whole point of it is to demonstrate not just to the town that we choose or manage to work with or whatever, but also to the Ukrainians who live with us in rugby and who send messages home. And I don't need to rehearse all the true awfulness of what's happening there. But we need to do both of those things, look after the Ukrainians' well-being that we have here, and that's their mental well-being as well. And we're saying, we see you and we support you. And they will take that message when they talk to people back in the Ukraine, that there's a place in England, there are many, I know, but we are very special. There's a place in England that has got you in their hearts. So I hope you support me on this. Thank you.
Are there any Councillor Roodhouse?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And can I thank you for the motion that's been brought forward. One of the things about this is, and about the twinning, is that we have slightly forgotten about Evora and Russellsheim, our twin towns, because of financial cuts over the years, that we've never really reinvigorated that particular twinning process. And I think aligned with this would be an opportunity to do that. I'm not quite sure whether Evora or Russellsheim are twinned with anybody in Ukraine either, but I remember when I was mayor and we did quite a lot of twinning work around that time, there were discussions about how the towns together could collectively then twin with somebody else. So it may be the opportunity to also write to those twin towns and actually say, we're planning to do this, would you like to join us together in actually bringing forward a Ukrainian town at the same time? So if it gets passed, that's what I would hope we could do. And it'd be a letter from the mayor, of course, doing that.
Any other speakers? Councillor Sayani?
I think this is this motion, I should stand actually, and this motion, very important for us to support it. But on the other hand, I also think that we should also support other towns that are suffering in the world, other towns, war-torn towns in other countries. And we are experiencing, in my view, a genocide in Gaza. And I do think that we should also support other towns so that we can have that cultural exchange and understanding between communities. So I think when we talk about inclusion and diversity, I think we need to embrace all communities and to recognise that there are other communities within the community that we're living in that actually are also struggling, and sometimes we don't acknowledge that. And I feel that it's important to acknowledge all those communities.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Livesey?
Yes, so I'm delighted to second this motion. Some of you might know that my family welcomed Anastasia into our home in May 2022. And she comes from a town called Turnapil, which is the home of the Kalush Orchestra, which won the Eurovision Song Contest. And Vladimir Putin celebrated that by shelling the town that night. When Anastasia came to us, she couldn't speak a lot of English, and sometimes we had to communicate in French. But I've not ever met anyone so determined. She was on her own. She left her father and her brother back in Ukraine. But after a year, she was almost fluent in English. She'd got a job in Hillmorton, and she walked there and back every day from Newbold. She still lives in Rugby, but a bit nearer to work now, and she still works in Rugby. So the people of Ukraine seem to me to be resilient and determined. Their country has made a stand against Putin and is essentially protecting us all from him. While the idea of twinning with a Ukrainian town won't make much practical difference now to the people there, while they face drone and missile attacks, hopefully it will extend the hand of friendship across Europe and will show solidarity to the brave and tenacious people of Ukraine.
Are there any more speakers?
I'm just saying.
Michael.
Right. There we go. Simon, thank you very much. Yeah. No. Thank you very much. And I think it's incumbent, as having the honour of leading the council, to put on record complete support for Councillor Brown's motion, and equally to echo what Councillor Siani had said, because I think, again, extending the friends at the boundaries of our friendship is a positive move. In a world where, you know, disinformation and a lot of evil and harm is being conducted, it's such a positive thing. And I think, you know, even as a way of positive, now we're going through a period with Ukraine where there's additional, you know, tension and threats that, you know, as if it could get any worse as to what the conclusion is. So I think the timing's really good. And I echo what Councillor Roodhouse said, that it's a great opportunity to extend friendships to old friends as well as new. So again, I think it's a fantastic motion. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? Councillor Poole?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If this motion is passed, and I hope it is, thank you for your comments, and you will be our representative on the working party.
You can only speak once, I'm afraid, Councillor Sayani. Yeah. Any other speakers? No? Okay, Councillor Brown, you're right to reply.
I think it's been said, and I think we can move to the vote now, please.
Okay, so moving to the vote. All those in favour, please show. It's unanimous. Yeah. Okay, so on to item 9. Motion to exclude the public under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972. Under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of information defined in paragraphs 1, 2 and 3 of Schedule 12A of the Act. I so move. Who will second the motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor.
Those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. The motion is